That's true.
Sir, now it is bigger than Gulbarga University.
Yeah.
College-wise.
As I said, in terms of faculty recruitment, if they complete, it will be more than Gulbarga University, I think.
We have just started now. We have just started with associate professors and professors, and hope to have another 24 assistant professors soon.
Oh, good, sir.
Yeah.
Good, sir.
Tamanna, sir.
Because only university which is going for recruitment is Raichur University.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the new regulation, new statute,
Yes.
combined statute.
Yes.
University, there are only two of them now. Professor Narasimha
sir.
also retired recently.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. Nasimurthy
Surendra
also.
and Professor Veena
No
Devi.
problem, sir. Ajit.
Yeah.
Only two of
The
us.
Surendra is the leading light.
Yeah.
No,
The next generation.
Thank you, sir.
We consider him as the leader of the generation Y.
Ajit.
I fully endorse what you said.
Yeah.
Surendra, you can't get a better.
Yes, sir. Yes, that is true, sir.
Yeah.
But if more recruitment happens, sir, then the department can grow.
Sure.
If one faculty or two, the department cannot grow.
And that way, I also appreciate our student Patil. She also keeps, hosting a lot of programs and tries to organize and provide, facilities for teachers to interact. That's something good at the college level. She's doing very well.
Thank you, sir. All because of your support, sir.
Tamanna, sir. Sir,
Tamanna is
no,
also
sir.
our student.
Okay,
He is
okay.
now the
Yes.
principal,
Yes, sir.
but he hasn't changed a bit.
Yes.
Like Guru and the Sisha is also light only. No change.
Same.
Irrespective of the chair changing.
The same respect, and then,
Sir, shall we start, sir, session?
yeah, sure, sir. We should.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. BLDE Associations, Srimati Bangaramma Sajjan, Arts, Commerce and Science College for Women, Vijayapur, under the IQC initiative, the Department of Political Science organizes one-day national webinar on India's role in the new global order. So in this webinar, we are having the distinguished personalities today, Professor Chandrakant M. Yapnur sir as a inaugurator of this program, and chief guest Professor Harish Ramasamy sir, Vice Chancellor Raichur University, Raichur. As a keynote speaker, today we are having with us Professor M.J. Vinod, retired professor, Department of International Relations, Christ University, Bangalore, and resource person, Professor B.V. Muralidhar sir, professor and head, Department of Political Science and Public Administration, SV University, Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh, and Professor Y. Surendra Kumar sir, professor, Department of Political Science, Bangalore University, Bangalore, and Dr. B.R. Patil, Madam, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, Government First Grade College, Harvard. So to begin the session, now I would like to call our beloved principal, Dr. Tammanna sir, for the welcome of the today's resource person, chief guest, as well as our inauguration. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone present here. Distinguished guests, esteemed faculty members, and dear participants. It is with great pleasure and a sense of privilege that I, Dr. Y. Tamanna, Principal of BLDE Association, Srimati Bangaramma Sajjan, Arts, Commerce and Science College for Women, Vijayapura, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to today's webinar on India's role in the new global order, organized under the IQC initiative by the Department of Political Science of our college.
Yeah.
In today's interconnected world, where global dynamics are constantly evolving understanding India's position and contribution in shaping the international discourse is more than pertinent than ever. This webinar serves as a platform to delve into critical insights, exchange ideas, and foster a deeper understanding of India's role in the global stage. We are honored to have with us today's esteemed speakers and who are experts in their fields. Their expertise and perspective will undoubtedly enrich our discussions and provide valuable insights into the multifaceted dimensions of the Indian global engagements. Global engagements. So, with this, so at the very outset, I would like to extend our warmest welcome to inaugurator of today's webinar, Professor C.M. Yatnur, sir, Department of Political Science, Gulbarga University, Kalburgi. Sir, I, on behalf of my institution and on my own behalf, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, uh, I would like to welcome our chief guest of today's webinar, my esteemed Guru and eminent political scientist, Dr. Harish Ramaswamy, sir, Vice Chancellor, Raichur University, Raichur. Sir, I, on behalf of my institution and on my own behalf, I welcome you, sir. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, I also take this opportunity to welcome our keynote speaker of the webinar, the great scholar and political analyst, Professor M.J. Vinod, sir, Department of International Relations, Christ University, Bangalore. Sir, I, on behalf of my institution and on my own behalf, I welcome you, sir. Sir, welcome you, sir.
Professor Vinod, we need some more light on your face.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is my pleasure to welcome our resource person of the webinar and a very kind-hearted person, Professor B.V. Muralidhar, sir, Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati. Sir, I, on behalf of my institution, I welcome you, sir.
Welcome,
Sir,
sir.
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I also take this opportunity to welcome our distinguished resource person, Professor S.Y. Surendra Kumar, sir, Professor and Chairman, Department of Political Science, Bangalore University, Bangalore. Sir, with a great honor, I extend a warm welcome to you on behalf of my institution and myself, sir. Sir, welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I deem it my pleasure to welcome Dr. Basurajeshwari Patil, madam, who is working an associate professor in the Department of Political Science, Government First Grade College, Dharwad. Madam, I am delighted to extend a sincere welcome to you on behalf of my institution and personally, madam. Madam, welcome you, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I also take this opportunity to welcome our IQSC coordinator, Professor V.S. Nandesh, and organizing committee members, Ms. Rekha Gadge and Saroja Bilge. I welcome you all. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the Department of Political Science for their dedication and efforts in organizing this intellectual stimulating event. Your commitment to promoting academic discourse and fostering critical thinking is truly commendable. To all our participants, whether you are joining us from within our institution or from various parts of the country, your presence today signifies your commitment to exploring and understanding complex global issues. So, your active participation and engagement are key to the success of today's discussions. So, once again, a warm welcome to everyone. I wish you an enlightening and productive webinar. Sir, thank you, one and all. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamanna.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your welcoming speech. Now, I would like to call Srimati H.S. Desai to introduce our today's inaugurator, Professor Chandrakant M. Yatnur, sir. Over to you, Desai, madam.
Good evening to all. It is said that the greatest gift of all that he ever gave to man is the gift of vision. And today is a day of not only vision, but also a day which will enlighten us, motivate us, and help us move in the direction of progress. the galaxy of intellectuals invited guests.
Desai ji, I
Sorry
think
for
you
the
should switch off
interruption.
your fan. Fan.
And sorry for the interruption. Madam, please make it brief.
And delegates. Today, we have gathered here to mark a momentous occasion as we inaugurate a visionary leader who illuminates values and aspirations. It is my honor to introduce today's inaugurator, Dr. Surendra, sir, Professor, Department of Political Science, former Vice Chancellor, Gulbarga University, Calgary, who has been transformative figure in students' lives. Sir has completed his UG, PG, PhD from Gulbarga University. His title for PhD is Sri Lanka's Foreign Policy under the Presidency of Vijayapur. Sir has total 30 years of teaching experience. Sir has experienced range of capacities, often spearheading new initiatives. Sir has worked as a Vice Chancellor. Your Excellency has worked as a Registrar of Gulbarga University. Sir has also worked as a member of NAPA team, visits for several colleges and universities within India. Sir has worked as Director, Distance Education, Gulbarga University, Gulbarga. To his credit, Sir has completed one minor research project and one ICCR sponsored major research project. Sir has also organized and chaired the session and delivered the lecture in national and international conferences. Sir has also organized Karnataka State Political Science Research Conferences. Sir has visited different countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Canada, Thailand, etc. for an academic assignment. Sir has also bagged many awards such as Asia Pacific Achiever Award for Education Excellence and International Achiever Award. Sir has guided 25 candidates for PhD and 20 for MPhil. With this brief introduction, I welcome you, sir, and I request you, sir, for inaugural speech. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for good words. Namaskara. Good afternoon to all,
Namaskar, sir. Yes.
friends and colleagues. It gives me immense pleasure to inaugurate this one-day webinar on India's role in the new global order being organized by the Department of Political Science, Srimati Bangaramma Sajjan, Arts, Science and Commerce College, Vijayapura. First of all, I thank the organizers, particularly the principal and my good friend Dr. Tammanna,
Thank you,
for
sir.
his extending invitation and asking me to inaugurate the webinar. Actually, I was a bit hesitant to accept this offer because with me there are a galaxy of academicians, senior friends, senior academicians like Professor Vinod and Professor Harish Ramaswamy. I suggested Tammanna to request Professor Harish Swami, being a Vice Chancellor, is the right person to inaugurate the webinar. But I came to know that it is Professor Harish Ramaswamy. He insisted that I should be the inaugurator. Thank you, sir. Thanks for
Thank you, sir.
your
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
big heart. Also, thanks to Professor Harish Ramaswamy for suggesting my name to inaugurate the webinar. Also, I thank all the fellow resource persons, my good friend Professor B.V. Muralidhar from SV University, Tirupati, another young friend, Professor Surendra Kumar from Bangalore University, Madam Dr. Basavarajeshwari Patil, and above all, the great scholar in international relation, Professor Vinod sir, whom always I admire as one of the greatest academician in the field of international relation, and also others. Uh, Let me say a few words about the topic of the webinar, that is India's role in the new global order. First of all, let us try to understand the global order. What is this global order? Here I want to take the help of the great political philosopher Martin Kaplan, where as a part of system theory he categorizes the existing world order and the past world order, the present and future world order. Based on the situation, he tried to categorize the world order into different types like multipolar, bipolar one, then unipolar. Particularly, Martin Kaplan argues that during 18th and 19th century, that is before Second World War, the world order was a multipolar one, or the existing world order that time was a multipolar one, wherein 4 to 5 equally powerful nations were there, and occasionally Britain used to act as a balancer. And after the end of Second World War, particularly up to 1991, we call it as the Cold War period. The world order was a bipolar one, wherein America and former Soviet Union were the two superpowers used to control the international activities. And after 1991, more particularly after the end of Cold War and the disintegration of former Soviet Union, the new global order emerged. Here, we can say that for some time, immediately after the disintegration of former Soviet Union and end of Cold War, for some time, it appears that the world order, the emerging world order of that time was a unipolar one, because the American action indicates that kind of world order, particularly after 9/11 incident, that is a terrorist attack on WTC and Pentagon. American action indicates that the existing world order that time was a unipolar one, where America emerged as a sole superpower and started acting as a big brother, even we can say that like a world policeman. Very soon, symptoms of emerging of a multipolar world came to existence. That is new global order. That is today's international system is once again heading towards a multipolar one. I mean, the new world order is like a multipolar one. So, number of nations, many countries around the world engaged in various forms of cooperation and coordination on wide variety of issues like trade and commerce, security, human rights, and environmental protection. This is facilitated by the absence of major conflicts between what we call former superpowers, that is America and former Soviet Union. And the new global order is based on liberal principles such as democracy, rule of law, and free markets, and is supported by international institutions such as the United Nations, European Union, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and WTO. The new global order is a term that refers to the emergence of new form of cooperation and dialogue among different actors in the 21st century. It is a response to the challenges and opportunities posed by globalization, climate change, pandemics, terrorism, etc., etc., and other issues that require collective and multilateral action and shared solutions. Some of the features of the new global order or new world order are the expansion and diversification of existing multilateral institutions such as the United Nations, IMF, and the World Bank to include more voices and perspectives from the developing world and the global south. The creation and strengthening of new regional and sub-regional organizations such as BRICS, the African Union, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and the European Union that aim to promote regional integration, development, security, and cooperation. The emergence of new networks and initiatives such as the Alliance for Multilateralism, the G20, and the Quad that seek to address specific issues or challenges that transcend national boundaries and require coordinated action, and the recognition of multipolar reality of the world where no single country or bloc can dominate or dictate the global agenda, and where different actors have to engage in dialogue and negotiation to find common good and mutual benefit. And why we are talking about the emergence of new global order? Because there are few reasons behind the emergence of new global order and the decline of the existing one. That is rise of China and its expansionism. One of the primary reasons behind the decline of existing world order is the rise of China as a global economic and military power. China's expansionistic policies, both in Asia and globally, challenge the existing multipolar world order. Its unilateral efforts to alter borders with neighbors and its assertive territorial expansion have created tensions and destabilized regional and global institutions. Also, economic and security threats from China. The economic and security threats posed by China have compelled countries like United States, Japan, and India to re-evaluate their engagement with China. This has led to efforts to de-risk their massive economic interdependence with China, which has implications for existing multilateral economic institutions. The Russian actions. The Russian occupation and annexation of Crimea in 2014 and Ukraine recently marked a significant challenge to the post-Cold War security order, particularly in Europe. This event disrupted multilateralism and collective security by causing rift and conflicts in the international community. Rise of alternative security forums. In response to China's expansionism, alternative security forums like Quad, AUKUS, and trilateral compacts have emerged. These forums reflect a shift away from traditional multilateral institutions, raising questions about the continuing relevance and continuity of existing regional organizations, and the changing perspective of key players, which led to the decline of existing global order and the emergence of new global order. The changing perspectives of key players such as Asian tigers, particularly India, have also contributed to the decline of existing world order. India's evolving view of international order, shifting from concerns about a unipolar Asia dominated by China to a more proactive engagement with the United States and its allies, has altered the dynamics of multilateralism in the globe and particularly in Indo-Pacific region. In this context, what is the role of India in the new global order? Particularly India in the region, South Asian region or in Asia in general, and South Asia in particular, and also in the globe, in the universe. India can play a leading role as well as other leading role in the South Asian region as well as globally to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific region that is based on the rule of law, respect for sovereignty, and peaceful resolution of disputes. India can also enhance its maritime security cooperation with like-minded countries to counter the challenges posed by Chinese assertiveness in the region. India can contribute to the re-globalization process by diversifying its trade and investment partners, especially in the global south, and by developing its domestic capabilities in key sectors such as manufacturing, services, and innovation. India can also advocate for a more democratic and equitable global governance system that reflects the realities and aspirations of the emerging economies. India can also use its opportunities of being a president of G20 as an opportunity to showcase its vision and achievements as a global leader, as well as to forge consensus on important issues such as climate change, sustainable development, health security, and digital transformation. India can also bridge the gap between the developed and developing countries by highlighting their common interests and challenges, and by proposing solutions that are inclusive and pragmatic. Lastly, I can say that in the emerging new global order, India, presently being a fifth largest economy, has all possibilities of becoming fourth or fifth largest economy in the world, can play very important role in the emerging global order. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, sir.
Tamanna.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your inaugural speech. Now, I would like to call again. Okay, sir. Now, again, I would like to call Srimati H.S. Desai to introduce our today's chief guest, Professor Harish Ramsamy, sir, Vice
Suleiman.
Chancellor, Raichur University. Yes, sir.
Suleiman, all of them know. So I think you can avoid wasting time on that. Okay?
Okay, fine, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, Tamanna, sir.
Right.
Sorry. Or make
Shall we stay?
ask the madam to make it brief as a
Okay,
formality.
sir. Okay. Yes, yes. Okay, fine, sir. Madam Desai,
Good
madam,
evening to all. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It
can
is
you
my
brief?
distinct. Yeah. I'll make it, sir. Sure. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce to our esteemed chief guest for this national webinar. Sir is a visionary leader and known for his notable achievements and contribution. His dedication and profound insights had made him a true inspiration to many. Sir is serving as a founder, vice chancellor of a newly established Raichur University, Raichur, since November 2020. He served as a professor in the Department of Political Science, Karnataka University, Dharwad. Currently, Sir is also serving as the chairman of the State Committee for Framing Political Science Subject for all universities based on National Education Policy 2020. He is also serving as the chairman of the Examination Reform Subcommittee constituted by the Government of Karnataka. Sir is also serving as the Board of Reviewers for Sage Publication India Private Limited. Sir is also chairman and member for NAC peer team visits for several colleges and universities within India. He has served as a member of the Jawaharlal Nehru University Board for a period of 3 years, nominated by the President of India. Sir has worked as a coordinator for Dr. Babu Jagjeevan Ram Studies Research and Extension Center. He extended
Yeah,
consultancy
that's enough.
to
That's enough. I
aspiring
think
political leaders in the Hubli Dharwad
concluded.
region and
All
to
of them
Impulse
know all
Research
these
and Data
things.
Analytics Private Limited. Sir is an international visitor to USA in 2007 and is an alumnus of the same. He has visited Portugal, Germany, Manila, Australia, and many
Waste
foreign
time.
countries. With this brief introduction, I welcome Sir for this webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Good afternoon to all of you. I'll be just taking few minutes of introduction and about 5 minutes for the so-called speech of the chief guest. At the outset, I must thank the BLDE and the Bangaramma College and Dr. Tamanna for organizing this program.
Sir.
And I must also thank the new technology that has helped us to cover the distance and bring our old friends together and the younger ones so that, the synergy comes out. That's a beautiful thing that's happening, and I am enjoying this new technology. And, I'm a very selfish man. You know why? Because Tamanna called me and said, "Sir, we want to organize this program." And like Mrs. Harris, I grabbed the opportunity. I said, yes, that's a good thing to bring my people back. And that's the thing that I did with Tamanna. And I don't know whether Tamanna likes it or not. I
No,
said,
sir.
these are the people I want on the board. And clearly, I'm very happy that all of you are here. And this webinar has some sense to make. Professor Vinodji is a very, very old friend of mine. And I think he is one of those who is keeping the IR lamp burning in the southern region, especially in Karnataka. Otherwise, Professor Yatnur is there, and followed by that now, of course, Surendra Kumar is managing. But in many other universities, we are finding that IR is not actually very active and alive. And of course, we have Murlidharji, who is a contribution from Yatnur. Yatnur suggested his name, and we are very happy to have him. This makes the whole webinar a national one. And of course, we have Yatnur himself. And I wanted him to inaugurate because I'm not qualified to inaugurate this. I don't have any specialization in IR. So I was very shy, and then I ran away from that. But then Tamanna said, putting a vice chancellor in the list would bring them some knack points. So from their perspective, I said, why not? Let them have it. Of course, Suri and Dr. Patil are the younger generation, which are carrying the activities of political science so well. And I wanted both of them because, they are the torchbearers for tomorrow. With these brief introduction about how this program was organized, I'm really happy to see Professor Vinod, Professor Surendra, Professor Murlidhar, and Patil, and others. Thank you very much. I will steal a sentence from Stephen Harper, whose Resina Chronicles 2024 talks about that India's emergence has consequences not only for its 1.4 billion people, but for the world as a whole. I think this sentence, in substance and summary, completely tells you what kind of role India has for the future. Now, from the stability point of view, if you see the Indo-Pacific region, and also from the point of view of the global health, democratic health, you find that India has been significantly contributing, and its choices have made profound impact on the shaping of the humanity's future. And this is something that we cannot forget when it comes to the warring world that we are seeing. And it's a sad thing that today, when we are talking about these issues and the role of India, I am seeing that none of the roles, including the UN, US, or India, have not been able to stop the wars, either in Palestine or in Ukraine. It's a sad thing. Where are we heading to is something that we need to actually, ponder upon. Now, India's rise is perceived largely as a force for good. I hope this actually converts itself into an action. Otherwise, we become philosophers of the world, but nothing actually happens in the ground. As a realist, I have my own reservations about how IR is actually playing upon the kind of role that world is seeing today. In case of India, the sheer size of India and the growing strength of Indian economy actually render India a more independent position today, better than the past. And it helps India to take its own decisions independently of the blocks that may be there. And that's a good thing to happen to India. And that's one of the reasons why it is actually moving forward under Mr. Modi's leadership. Now, India's G20 presidency is a classical example of how India tried to be an inclusive country and tried to push its agenda, bringing the Latin American countries into the fold of the G20. It's a classical case to say that India has concern for the world. It believes in a egalitarian kind of a world where the world is balanced and the poor also gets the benefit of the developments. It is true when I see that 21st century is seen as the Asian century, but I'm not really guaranteed because I don't have the examples to say that we are actually leading, although it is said to be our century. So there is also a challenging period, what we are seeing around, because while India is trying to do its best, and Mr. Modi's leadership seems to be quite influential around the world, I'm not really sure whether we are able to carry the domestic heterogeneous society together. And this is where I try to find a linkage between what we are doing in the world outside and what we are trying to do within. Now, with the wars that have broken around us, what has been our contribution? Why have we not been able to be so influential as we talk about India's role? Is something that I feel is to be answered. I look at the experts to answer this because I don't, at some point, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Look at the way US politics is going. The quality of politics also plays an important role in the quality of the international relations that is built around the world. Because if your politics is decaying, your leadership suffers. And because your leadership suffers, the new trends in the global order suffers. And that's what I think I'm seeing. I should be educated on this because I'm not too sure. Because I see the conflicts as the conflicts of values and ideas more importantly. They're not merely a war that is being waged by one country upon the other. Look at Russia and Ukraine. There are values and there are ideas which are conflicting. But what is the decision that we are taking? We have not been able to resolve it, although if you look at the number of countries with NATO, the power equation should have been very different, but it doesn't happen there. Look at what is happening in Palestine. Look at what's happening in Pakistan, our neighborhood. So to me, there are a lot of these issues that we need to think. So what I feel personally is today we need a world where there is some constructive dialogue and an open dialogue, but that these dialogues must also be grounded with experience and expertise. You know a lot of foreign policy experts in the past, diplomacy, how it played a role. But today, I don't see these things playing any important role. And I'm not even seeing a good diplomat who has been able to sort of bring people to a table. Now, look at how Netanyahu is behaving and consistently not accepting the offers that are made, even to give a brief period of interim relief to stop the war so that Palestine could recover. And what are the other countries doing? Most of them are just keeping quiet and they're afraid to speak against certain countries. So I think this webinar to me is a path to share these kinds of dialogues. And thanks to the technology, as I said, and I'm sure with experts like Vinod, Surendra, Muralidhar, and Madam Patil, we'll definitely have something to learn from this and new ideas which are constructive for the younger generation to ponder upon. With these words, I thank you for inviting me here, and I take the pleasure of meeting all of you. And I once again say thanks to Tamanna for this opportunity, because I'm very glad and happy to listen to all the four of them, and including Yatnur. And I listen to Yatnur as usual. He's very scholarly, but I am unfortunately not a student of IR, and my understanding doesn't go so deep. But as I said, like Karna, IR has always been very dynamic, and I love this discipline IR. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Addressing the webinar. Now I would like to call Mr. Sharat Patil, Faculty Department of English, to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor M.J. Vinod, sir. Over to Sharan, sir.
Thank you, Sulaiman, sir. It's an extraordinary honor to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker for today's national webinar, the illustrious Professor M.J. Vinod. A towering figure in the realm of political science, Professor Vinod is a highly revered faculty member in Department of International Studies at Christ University, Bangalore. His remarkable career includes serving as professor and dean at Bangalore University, cementing his legacy as a distinguished academic leader. Professor Vinod's academic journey is nothing short of exemplary, holding an MA, MPhil, and PhD from Bangalore University, with his doctoral thesis receiving critical acclaim. His contributions to the field are monumental, with recent groundbreaking publications such as Cooperative Federalism in South Asia and Europe, which was published in 2024, and Empowering Marginalized Communities in India, which was published in 2022, and Contemporary Political Theory in 2023. A scholar of unparalleled distinction, Professor Vinod has been awarded some of the most prestigious fellowships in the world. These include Fulbright Fellowship, where he captivated minds as a scholar in residence at Morgan State University, and Salzburg Fellowship in Austria. He has also been honored as a Ford Foundation Fellow at University of Maryland, a Swiss Foreign Ministry Fellow in Geneva, and held a esteemed position at Henry L. Smithson Center in Washington, D.C., and as an International Visitor Fellow of the U.S. Department. Professor Vinod's expertise is vast and profound, encompassing South Asian security, Indian foreign policy, the Indo-Pacific, and US-India relations. His academic influence extends to his role as a visiting professor at Jadavpur University and his close association with Jawaharlal Nehru University. His thought leadership is reflected in his contribution to top-tier national and international journals and his insightful monthly column for Deccan Herald. Today, we are all privileged to have such a luminary of such high caliber with us. Sir, thank you for being with us, and the stage is all yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's indeed my pleasure to be here this afternoon. Professor Harish Ramswamy, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Tamanna, Principal, Professor Chandrakant Yatnur, Professor Muralidhar, Professor Surendra Kumar, Professor B.R. Patil, teachers, research scholars, students, and participants offline, online. At the outset, my sincere thanks to Dr. Tamanna for inviting me and giving me this privilege and honor to be in the midst of some of my very, very close friends for years together. I'm so happy to be here this afternoon. And also for giving me this pleasure to uh, deliver the keynote address. In fact, there's very little for me to say after two very well-known scholars like Professor Yatnur and Professor Harish Ramaswamy have spoken. Maybe I will just reflect on a few issues over here, and I've been told to wind up in 20 minutes, and that's fair enough. I'll just revolve my presentation around some core questions which I think also have been raised by Professor Yatnur in his presentation. One is the whole question of what is new about the new world order, what is new about the world order in the first place, which he tried to address. I'd like to raise 4 questions or 5 questions. First is, what is the newness of the new world order? Secondly, what is the nature of this new world order from India's perspective? Thirdly, how can India shape this new world order? Fourthly, how does India perceive, and this is very, very important, Professor Harish also raised it somewhere down the line in his presentation, what is the legitimacy of this new world order? I think that's extremely important. Perhaps large part of it can revolve around that. Fifthly, will the post-war, post-Cold War world order continue to serve as some sort of a superstructure for US global strategy, US policy? Maybe rising powers like China, India, of course, Russia. So how do you situate them? I think that's very, very important. Of course, this seminar will primarily focus on India's role. And how will all this impact on India's global regional interests and our larger strategy? To start with, the overall global order, I think, is manifested by a variety of concerns. Professor Yatnur has raised many of them. I'd just like to reiterate some of them and perhaps take it forward. One is the complex geopolitical, geoeconomic, and geostrategic landscape that we are all which we are part of. And in this larger geostrategic, geopolitical, geoeconomic world order, we are seeing the type of shifting arrangements that are falling into place, shifting power balances in particular regional settings. Professor Yatnur made a reference to Indo-Pacific. Maybe we can get back to that. We are also seeing the renewed contestations. But Harish raised this whole question, why? I mean, we are still grappling with this whole phenomenon of war. I mean, Ines Claude wrote about his idea of swords into plowshares, as you know, the end of the Second World War and the establishment of the United Nations as hope for mankind, going back even to the Kellogg-Briand Pact of 1928 with the hope of putting an end to wars. But it has not necessarily happened. So I think the fact is we are trying to look at how we can manage conflicts, okay, how we can not necessarily abet conflicts. At a domestic sphere, Professor Harish also referred to the whole question of the internal-external dynamics. I think that's also very, very important. The larger question is, what is the political? And how do we situate and how do we understand what it means to be political also in a domestic context, likewise in the regional context, likewise in the global context, with all its ramifications in each one of these contexts. I think that's what we are also grappling with in a larger sense. And also the growing transnational arrangements, transnational regimes, transnational challenges that we are facing from state and non-state actors. So I think the point is that we are facing a variety of challenges. Challenges also present themselves with opportunities. So I think we need to give hope. We need to have hope over here. I think there are a growing range of threats that we face. There is no doubt about it in the post-war, post-Cold War world order that we are discussing over here. And this is probably happening for a variety of reasons. I mean, in recent times, we are looking at the role of aggressive revisionist powers. Of course, we have our own sense of what revisionist powers could mean in this context. The reality of regional instability and a variety of factors for that in terms of rising powers in regions and superimposing their will in the region like China, as we are seeing. Shifting power balances of various kinds and arrangements that are being put into place like Quad that Professor Yatnur mentioned and other such arrangements. We are seeing extreme manifestations of nationalism and its sort of spillover effects on domestic politics, domestic as well as regional and global, ramifications that it has. Variety of governance challenges that we are facing, so many of them. and role of state and non-state actors and so on and so forth. So what are the challenges for India in terms of this ever-evolving global order that is time and again getting reordered? There is no sort of a scenario where the order, remains static. The order always is subject to so many factors and forces. And history has shown that social, economic, political, cultural, technological, military, personality, leadership factor. It can go on like this endlessly, and they all, in one form or the other, impact on our sense of the world order at any particular point of time. So we can have different versions of the new world order that we are talking of within the larger sense of the new world order that we are trying to conceptualize. I think that is the scenario over here. And hence it is very complex. It's not a black and white scenario. There is a gray area also. And there are possibilities. There are opportunities also. There are challenges also. There is no doubt about it. That's the way it presents itself to us. So on the ground, what are the challenges for India? I think the geopolitical landscape that Professor Yatnur also mentioned and Professor Harish also mentioned. I think this landscape, is continuously subject to a variety of shifts and shifts in terms of equations, shifts in terms of coalitions, shifts in terms of balancing, shifts in terms of the transformations that are taking place in different realms of day-to-day life, and how this all impacts on our understanding of the world order today. Of course, primarily, there seems to be a lot of magnifying. We always magnify many of the important epochal events that have taken place. For example, America's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan and the impact of that, or going earlier to the first Gulf War and second Gulf War, and the impact of that, for example, and more recently, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and some of the issues that Professor Harish also raised in this context, or even going back to issues like health security with the dawn of COVID-19 and the type of legacy it has left behind, or problems that it has left behind, and so on and so forth. So one of the challenges I think the challenge that India faces basically is that the world order is continuously evolving, it is continuously shifting. And the question is, how do we situate ourselves at any point of time? So there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies, as they say. There are permanent interests. There are no doubt about it. But then it doesn't mean that we are being immoral. I mean, it could be a scenario where we are being more pragmatic, more realistic. And that also has to be conceptualized. That also has to be situated in terms of a particular time frame or a context or a particular government and so on and so forth. So yes, I agree. There is an overall sort of a shift towards multipolarity. There is no doubt about it. Farid Zakaria spoke of non-polarity. He said it's neither unipolar nor bipolar nor multipolar. He spoke of non-polarity. That's one way of even situating it. Or rather, it's a combination of all this. There is no one particular pole in that sense. Okay, so you are sort of, you link up to a pole depending upon how you look at the issues on the ground, the challenges on the ground. So I think in that sense, if one looks at the challenge that India faces, I think is the fact that the Indo-Pacific is emerging as a major center of gravity, as we all know. Asia, I think, in terms of its various manifestations with South and Southeast Asia or Central Asia or West Asia, in terms of all its regional affiliations and sense that we have about Asia, I think is a very important part of our neighborhood policy, our extended neighborhood policy, as we know. So primarily, I think probably one can also say that what we are seeing are changing narratives of the new world order that we are talking of. I mean, there is no one narrative that one can probably say. That's what I said at the beginning, probably. There is this larger sense that we have to, it's a matter of debate that we can have. The fact that the new order, the world order is also reordering itself consistently. It's a continuous process of ordering and reordering in that sense of the term. And hence, that puts immense challenge on the political leadership, on the diplomats, on the foreign policy, institutional arrangements that we have, or also in terms of how we articulate our interests, our agendas, our responses, and whether the resources, human and material, match with all that. I think that is extremely important. So and in a way, the regional orders are also evolving. That's the reality. Our sense of the regional order that we had, or orders that we had, say, for 30 years back, 35 years back, I mean, what a transformation through which they have gone through. When one looks at it even in terms of our own neighborhood, for example. So the regional orders are also evolving in terms of the varying levels of economic development, the varying levels of the varying images that we have about the type of political regimes that they present themselves in, the various perceived threats and challenges that they are having to negotiate as part of their policy decisions that they have to take, both domestic and foreign policy. And Professor Harish also drew this link between the domestic and the internal external dynamics, which I think is so very important. So I think the new world order that Professor Harish and Professor Yatrur spoke of, which I go along with in a larger sense, I mean, they present a variety of dilemmas for India, as I see it. I can just sort of highlight some of these dilemmas, which we can also discuss if necessary. One is, as I think, we were always sort of, we had this overarching global narrative from the global north, either in the realm of the discipline of international relations, and willy-nilly, most of our thought processes also tended to sort of use that as a framework to understand issues, problems, challenges on the ground. But I think now there is a certain subtle shift in that. And the Chinese come up with their own framework to understand global issues. India is also evolving that, I guess. So we always had one. We're trying to rediscover that, I guess. So we now live in the post-colonial, post-Cold War world order. And many of those legacies of the post-war world order, immediately after the Second World War, I think they continue. And Professor Harish was, in a way, referring to that also when he spoke of the United Nations, and probably helplessness of the United Nations at this point of time. Though we cannot become too skeptical about its role. We can discuss that, of course. So I think India continues to question this world order, especially the post-war world order. And some of the manifestations of what we call during George Bush's time, we call a new world order, probably now a new world order. It depends on how you conceptualize it, as I said, because it's always evolving, as I said. So India has been, as I understand, consistently trying to sort of reflect on this particular mix that we are presented with, namely the old and the new. So the old is very much part of the new, and the new also is not, in a silo that is independent of the old. So it is a mix that we have to actually deal with, as I see it, as part of what we may call a new world order at this point of time. So the fact also is the world has changed dramatically. The reality is that today countries India is a classic case, China is a classic case, India is wealthier today, India is more prosperous today, India is more complex today. This holds good for most countries that have seen an upward trend in terms of these parameters, isn't it? India is strategically more important in terms of the regional coalitions building process, for example, without necessarily categorizing X country or Y country as the target. And hence, I think there is a greater sense of how India and United States perhaps relate to one another in terms of the differences that they have, economic, trade-related, technology-related, or even strategic. They're able to reach out to one another much more effectively and diplomatically, without creating a diplomatic stalemate, unlike the past. So that type of a transformation has taken place. So they're in a better position to appreciate the differences that are very much part of this larger process of deliberation and discussion and negotiation in the world of diplomacy among the policymakers. I think that type of a transformation has taken place. They do not necessarily see the relationship as a zero-sum situation. They recognize the reality of a gray area in this relationship. I think that is a transformation that has taken place. That transformation is again a reflection of the changed world order in which we are, the changed regional orders of which I think which we are a part of. And India, I think, is also capitalizing on the opportunities. Not that everything is a problem. There will be problems. History is written with problems. We have seen that. But at the same time, we need to see how we could, fit in there, how we can situate ourselves. And I think India has been doing that rather effectively. That's why Bharat Karnad wrote this book on why India is not a great power as yet, or rather, to use his term, major power as yet, which means we are almost there. Okay, so he has his own sense of that, and what more we need to do in terms of these subtle nuances to make it happen. That's, I think, is what he's probably also trying to say in terms of the finer details that he has mentioned in his book, isn't it? So I think today when we talk of the new world order, I think, see, as Professor Harish said, there are a lot of changes in terms of the parameters and the variables and our understanding of these variables. For example, whether it's population as an indicator, whether it's to do with the logistics, whether it's to do with geopolitics, whether it's to do with boundaries and climate, and whether to do with the resources, human and material. So I think today there is an overarching change that is taking place. If you look at the G7 countries, today the G7 countries are about 7% of the global of the world's population probably, and they account for about 50% of the world economy, approximately, I'm saying. If you look at the OECD countries also, you clearly see how can be a change in fortunes. As a result of the rise of China, rise of India, China is not an OECD country for reasons that are peculiar to China. India is also not there for a variety of reasons. But the developed countries who are part of the OECD countries today are only 21% of the world's population, but they are about 80% of the world's income. But that could dramatically change over the next 15 years. So I think that is the type of indicator that we have for the future possibilities. And countries outside OECD like India and China, two very important countries, actually these have rising economies, risen in many respects, and really ridden with a lot of problems also and challenges too. They are rising strategic profiles, which I think Professor Harish and Professor Yathur made a mention too. These profiles are to be located both in terms of the region as well as across regions, maybe globally also. And the rising power and their rising power and influence is something that I think is extremely important. Of course, China poses dilemmas for India in terms of the new world order. Probably the most important dilemma, of course, we are all aware of the other issues in terms of history of India-China relations, which I don't have to mention to an august audience like this. But I think particularly the dilemma in terms of the larger sense of the political vision that China has, as well as in terms to the extent to which this political vision that China has seems to be at variance with the international liberal order. There is a problem over there. There's a problem over there. And at the same time, we see that Beijing is very much part of the world. It's a manufacturing hub. It's part of the world economic order. It's part of the WTO. It is very assertive about the need to advance free trade. It promotes its ideology of market socialism so very, productively, as we have seen over the last many decades, isn't it? Now, India's worry basically is that whether China, with its economic clout, could impose a certain regional order which will be detrimental to our interests, will be detrimental to global interests. China has also given a go-by to the Permanent Court of Arbitration's decision about the South China Sea. We very well know that. I mean, they virtually tore it and threw it into the waste paper basket. Okay, so that is the type of China that we are worried about. The other image of China is China that is one of the most important trading partners of India today. So how do you handle both these two images of China that we have? Okay, so we have handled it, I think, very astutely, very tactfully, very tactfully. You cannot antagonize. We are not enemies. We are at the same time. We need to also collaborate. We need to negotiate our problems and our challenges, including border dispute. As you see, recently also there were some talks that took place after all the fiascos, all the unfortunate events that took place, especially after the Sumdarong Valley incident in late 1980s, I think, isn't it? So I think India is in a global churn. I won't take too much time, a few more minutes. I have many things to say, but I think this can probably we can keep it for the discussions if necessary, if some issues come up. But overall, I think the fact is that there are these challenges and dilemmas that India is not going to be smooth sailing for India. It cannot be smooth sailing for any country. Whenever the world order has gone through a dramatic shift or a turn, I mean, it has not been smooth sailing for those aspiring countries in regional settings, for example, or in various contexts, whether it's Europe or whether it is Asia or any part of the world. especially in the post-colonial context in which I think it makes a lot of sense, not otherwise. So I think today New Delhi is very much, New Delhi's voice is very much, I think, a part of discussions and debates in regional forums and in global forums. So I think India is now wooed by global powers. That by itself does not necessarily, we don't have to be sort of rest assured that things will necessarily fall into place because of that. But I think the fact is that even in the global governance agenda, I think India is increasingly playing a more important role. There is no doubt about it when it comes to the environmental debate, other issues, trade-related issues, isn't it? Nuclear issues, human rights issues. You can see that clearly happening across the board. I think even NATO, opened its doors for India for higher levels of engagement without necessarily meaning to suggest that India would join NATO as a full-fledged member. Not necessarily so, isn't it? So I think the challenge is where Russia's role is so very important. I'll just take a few more minutes and stop. Russia's role is so important. Russia has in a way identified India and China as, partners in this exercise of friends, you may say so. But I think the challenge is that the global power balance and regional power balances are always subject to shift. After the Ukrainian war started, I mean, many things have happened. We all know that. A lot of discussions have taken place. They are likely to constrain some of India's options. They could also be perceived as possibilities for opening out in terms of our other maximizing our interests also. Maybe our energy interests, for example, or even in terms of ensuring that because we would also ensuring that a close ties between Russia and China also should not be detrimental to our interests in the region. So I think this tussle between the West on the one side and Russia and China on the other is assuming different challenging dimensions today, which I think probably needs to be discussed. So even China's rise and its aggression, I think, continue to transform the security dialogue in India continuously, and rightly so. So I think Russia is facing a crisis because it is more or less like a junior partner now to China. And this is something that is also problematic. Now, India perhaps is facing its most serious strategic shift in its strategic milieu at this point of time, since the end of the Cold War, since the Russia-Ukraine war started, probably. Because both Russia and China probably are saying that they are part of the global South. And the global South is not a monolithic edifice either. And both are trying to wean away countries to their, in terms of weaning away these countries from the power and influence of the United States. And both of them have their own notions about formal alliances, like NATO, for example. So I think, so there is no one single viewpoint in the global North also. So it's a churning process, and India is very much caught in this churning process. I think it also poses challenges and opportunities for us. So I will stop here because there are others also to speak, and we can take this discussion forward. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And if there are any issues in the discussion, we will take it forward later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your keynote speech. Now, we will move forward. I would like to call again Shrimati H.S. Desai to introduce our another resource person, Professor B.V. Muralidhar, sir. Madam, please.
Thank you, Suleiman. Good evening to all. It is with great pleasure and honor that I would like to introduce Professor B.V. Muralidhar, sir. Sir is presently discharging his responsibilities as an professor and chairman, BOS, in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, SV, University, Tirupati. Sir's journey is marked by a series of remarkable achievements. He did his master's in 1985 and got third rank out of 460 students at PG level. He did the MPhil and doctoral degree in 1995 from the same university. His area of specialization and interest and international relation foreign policy. It is a matter of pride and honor that he is the first UGC JRF of the department. Later, he joined the department as an assistant professor. Dr. Muralidhar sir is a member of various associations, academic bodies in India and abroad, and contributed research articles in national and international journals. His article on Gujarat rights, The Ugly Scar on Secular India, published by Academia UK, has 1678 citations so far. Sir has organized two national seminars and two international conferences in 2019 and 2021. During the COVID time, he has organized 16 international webinars and 6 national webinars. Professor Murli sir delivered keynote and lecture address in several national and international conferences. Sir is an author of 11 books and editor in India and foreign journals. He presented research articles both at national and international seminars, conferences, and visited South Korea, Malaysia, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, etc. on academic assignment. He was a co-convener for panel 32 in the A2 EASAS conference at Lund, Sweden in July 2004. Sir was selected by the Department of State, USA, to do a course on American politics and thought at UMass Amherst, USA in 2007. He chaired 16 technical sessions at national and 10 at international level. Sir has successfully guided 17 PhDs, 9 MPhil, and 4 PDF scholars. He gave more than 115 extension lectures, 117 academic staff college talks so far. Today, we are privileged to have Muralidhar sir for sharing his profound insights on the given topic. His expertise will surely enlighten us and ignite and enrich us, our understanding and perspectives. With this brief introduction, I am very proud to welcome Dr. Muralidhar sir for this webinar. Further, I request sir to deliver his given topic. Sir, please, over to you, sir.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Is it
sir.
audible? Am I audible? Yeah, yeah.
Audible,
Yes.
sir, audible.
Thank you very much, dear colleague, for your nice introduction. And with the galaxy of academicians, especially like Professor Harish Ramaswamy Garu, my good friend and colleague, Professor Vinod, another senior faculty, Professor Chandrakant Yatnur Saab, so Professor Surendra Kumar and Dr. Patil. I think that there is something to be learned from every one of them. Thank you very much. And my greetings and appreciation to the organizing committee led by Professor Nandesh, the coordinator, Dr. Tamanna, the principal, all the members of the organizing committee, Ms. Rekha, Ms. Saujanya, and Professor Yatnur, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Harish Ramaswamy, my friend, Professor Vinod, other resource persons, faculty members, scholars, participants, young student friends, ladies and gentlemen. Sundar Subhasanjay, a very beautiful good afternoon to each and every one of you. And when Dr. Tamanna sent a message saying that they are going to organize a national webinar on India's role in the new global order, he said your name has been suggested by Yatnur Saab and others. Can you accept? Friends, I'm very happy to be part of this particular national webinar being organized by this college, and especially a degree college coming forward to organize a webinar is a great thing. And to be very honest with you, my father is a Kannadiga, my mother is an Andhra. And one thing which in my CV she missed was I'm a tennis player, and I played in Karnataka also. So thereby, when looking at all the people sitting on in this particular webinar, I'm just remembering my playing days as a student and as an MPhil scholar. Even still, I play tennis. Thank you very much. And the topic, can Dr. Tamanna please share the PPT? I'll make it only 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Because there is some problem from my side, thereby I have to send it to
Just
Dr.
minutes.
Tamanna.
Minutes. Just a minute.
Yes. So the title of my talk is India as a Global Power, Challenges and Exploring the Opportunities. Friends, our beloved Vice Chancellor, then Professor Yatnu Sir, then Professor Vinod have clearly mentioned that what role India has to play or will be playing in the new global order. Just before I make my presentation, let me tell you very brief. This is for especially for the young minds who are sitting in this particular webinar. Because when you want to become a major player, the first thing is you must be in a position to be a global power. How this global power status can be achieved, and then we will have an opportunity to play a very positive role in the coming 20 or 25 years. By 2047, the government of India has determined that we should come to that particular level. Is it possible? This is $1 million question, which, as a student of political science and public administration, I too have in my mind. The reason being, apart from the vast resources, the population and information technology which we have and other things, yet there are so many challenges which the country is facing right from 1947. So thereby, if we can overcome those challenges which I'll be showing on the slides, then I can say maybe the coming 20 or 25 years, by the time 2047, when we are going to celebrate 100 years of India's independence, then the dreams of the present government may be fulfilled, friends. But everything hangs in balance. The reason being, please, next slide. Can you just tap on that? There is a video, if it is possible, because there is some problem with that. Okay, so that video is right from 1947. It has been recorded by an American company saying that how India will be within this 20-30 years. They have projected in a way that India will surely attain the status of a global power. Gradually, starting from 1947 to 57, 57 to 67, and from 67 to 2024, like that. So they have faced it in different periods, and then they were of the opinion, the American company is of the opinion that India can reach to that stage. Next slide, please. Yes. So when we talk about the new global order, or the new world order, or the emerging world order, then we have this, because as a tennis player, I want to put this that instead of actors, I want to put it as players. So they are the key players in this new global order, led by United States, followed by China, then Russia, which was once the former Soviet Union, a major superpower, now no more. Then the EU, the European Union, and the ASEAN, as stated by the previous scholars. Then the other players comes from the Germany, UK, Japan, France, South Korea, and our own country. Coming to the second subtopic which I have presented in slide is, what are the key features of a developed nation? I'm just bit deviating from the topic which is the theme, because as I told you, once you want to play a major role in international politics, definitely the first thing or the first component is you must be a developed nation. And what are the key features of being a developed nation in general? It's not only pertaining to India, but any nation which has become a developed nation. One is the political stability. As pointed out by the earlier scholars, there are few countries in the world which are politically stable and automatically they have developed to such an extent that they are bracketed as developed countries. And we traveled from the underdeveloped to the developing. And now we are in the transition phase of developing to the developed. So we have another 20 plus years to go and see whether we can come, whether the transformation will be fulfilled or not. The second one is military capability or capacity. Friends, remember, a developed nation will definitely have that military capacity to deal with any kind of situation. In the Cold War period, we have two types of powers, the superpowers and the major powers. The superpowers are the one where they can involve in any part of the world and come out of it. But whereas a major power, their role is limited only to that particular region. So during the Cold War period, only United States and the former Soviet Union had the capacity or the capability to involve themselves in any kind of military activity around the world. Whereas India, China, and others have a limited capacity or limited reach. That's why they were called as major powers. The third one is economic prosperity. And we all know that political stability leads to economic prosperity, or economic prosperity depends on the political stability. And look, in the next slide, I'll be showing the 2021 data and later the 22 to 24 data also. Industrialization and infrastructure. These are the two areas where the developed nations must have crossed by the time they became the developed countries. Industrialization and infrastructure facilities, they are abundantly available in these nations. And the quality of life, what they lead, will determine whether you are in the first category or in the second categorization of the nations. And environmental stewardship, this has become a major feature of late, especially environment, climate change, and others where people are talking repeatedly how far these countries can go for sustainable development, sustainable climate, and all these things. Next, technological advancement, finally. So technologically, you must be very sound. You have the best technology which no other country can have, or when compared to other nations. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is the key comparison of India with other countries. So when people say that India is growing, India is moving forward, this statistics of 2021 clearly shows that what has been said by the various agencies is not that correct. The reason being, if you look at some of the statistics coming out in India, in some major or key fields, the statistics or the data, I can say, was way back in 2011 or 2012. After that, the data has not been published by the government. And nobody knows the reason behind that. So if you look at this one, you can see in the right-hand side corner of the slide, You have the HDI index as well as HDI rank. It's being led by Germany, and India's rank is 132. Germany's rank is 9. This is the data of 2021. Next, gross national income per capita of the 7 biggest economies by GDP. US economy is 76,370, whereas India is $2,380. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the most important one which we can see. No, please. Before slide. Yes, this one. Percentage of government spending on health and education, where we stand. And even in the latest budget, the percentage has gone down on health and education. That's what the data shows. And the last one is the life expectancy. India's life expectancy is around 60 plus. Next slide. So this is the data which has been collected from 22 to 24 as far as India is concerned. The HDI is 0.644 score and the rank is 134. The gross national income is $2,390 only. And then come to the health and education, 2.1 to 2.22 percentage of GDP, and life expectancy has crossed 70.62, 52 years. So this is the data of the current year. Next one. Next slide, please. So friends, let's come to the challenges. And some of the points were covered by Professor Vinod. And we have the first challenge is how to manage our population. By the information received from the various agencies, it seems that within 2 or 3 years, 40% of the Indian population will be living in urban areas. So managing this 40% of the population in urban areas is going to be a huge task for the Indian government. And the next one is inequality and social justice. As we all know that the system which runs in our country, inequality and social justice, socio-economic inclusion of rural India, this is a very important thing. Rural India, they have been neglected a lot. Still, people face the issues of malnutrition, health, bad roads, sanitation, and other things. Even after 70 years of independence, 70 years plus of independence, still there are certain pockets in this country where the rural population suffer. I was traveling a few years back. I was traveling to Amarkantak. I'm very sorry to say that from the airport, after I got down from Raichur and wanted to go to the Amarkantak, the Indira Gandhi Central University, the roads were so bad. And the lighting, there was no proper street lighting also. But still, people carry out their daily activities in those areas. Next one, bureaucracy and corruption. Better said, whatever less we say about the bureaucracy and the corruption, the reason being, there is a lot of red tapeism and corruption. And my state is a classical example. The last 5 years, we have seen how the bureaucrats have behaved and to what extent the corruption has reached in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Next, reforms in education. On one side, the government wants to implement the reforms in education or brings reforms in education, or there are in some states or in some pockets, the states are not willing to go with a uniform education pattern. We can see, especially the South, and some of the states have vehemently said that we are not going to accept this kind of policy. We will have our own policy wherein it will be meeting the demands of our state. Next, health and sustainability. As I told you, this is a crucial sector which determines the kind of developed status to you, skill development and employability. The data collected is we have skills, but unfortunately, they are not being properly used by the stakeholders. So thereby, we feel that still India requires skill development programs so that employment opportunities can be increased. Next, infrastructure and connectivity. And I gave the best example of the central Madhya Pradesh, and this is more important. Infrastructure and connectivity has to be, no doubt, the government, sorry, Narendra Modi's 3.0, the government 3.0 is taking necessary steps to have a lot of connectivity. Yet, within these 20 or 22 years, how much we achieve will determine the kind of status which we will have. Next one, please. So despite the negative side of this, I feel there are opportunities and the future ahead. One is the demographic dividend. So 30% of the Indian population will be below 25 years, will be, and they have ample opportunity to develop themselves and thereby contribute for the growth of the nation. And robust information technology. India has the best minds, and we know the CEOs of big companies in and around the world are from India. Even though the opportunities which we could not create for them within the nation, yet they could get and make India proud. Entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we have a big ecosystem which can be managed properly. This has to be done if India has a positive role to play in the new world order. Strategic investment. This is very important, friends. How you invest strategically in climate, human rights promotion, and sustainable development. Next, global partnerships. As we have seen, India is trying its best to be a part of so many regional and sub-regional formal and informal networks of late for the last 10-20 years. And we have been playing an active role in these networks. From 90s to 2000 or 2010, we lost connectivity with the Muslim world and the African nations because for some reasons or the other, these regions, they began to think that India is moving towards Israel. Thereby, there was a kind of negative feedback about India's role as a non-aligned country. So from non-alignment, we became multi-alignment. So all these changes have been taking place, and thereby these global partnerships and the G20 summit, which India has hosted very successfully in New Delhi. And India is a major power in Asia, which nobody can deny. With China, whom we call it as a dragon, being number one, the second best is India. So thereby these are the opportunities which India has to use to move ahead and look at the future in a positive way. Next one, please. Yes. So coming to my final analysis of this particular how India has to be. Number one is how India can play or shape the new world order. So first thing is permanent membership in the UN Security Council. Friends, let us not beg. Let us not ask any request. The time has come for us to demand. From 1950s till now, we have been requesting or we are asking the other big five nations to provide us an opportunity to be a part and parcel of UN Security Council. But one major impediment for us is China and Pakistan. And earlier it was the Cold War also. So thereby we could not get it. Still, India has the rightful place to be in the UN Security Council, and we can play a very important role in Quad and ASEAN and other regional groupings, and we can contribute to the re-globalization process. That is, diversifying our trade investment, especially in global south, and we can move ahead with democratic and equitable global governance system. And just now I told you that being a part and parcel of the global network, both regional as well as sub-regional, India can play a positive role. And the final one is showcase its vision and achievements as a global power. Friends, by getting a membership in the UN Security Council, which may not be the ultimate, but to be treated as a global power, India has a rightful demand along with other countries. So no doubt Germany has, Japan has, South Africa, South Korea, they may claim their right. And with that we also. And our initiation of hosting the G20 summit and the invitation to the G7 summits, India can showcase its leadership qualities, plus climate change, sustainable development, health security, and digital transformation. And most important thing is India can be a bridge between the developed and the developing nation because of its earlier non-aligned status. No doubt people will have a different opinion that non-alignment was not really non-alignment. I too have to accept it. But during the Cold War period, definitely a major policy which India has initiated and followed to a large extent was the policy of non-alignment, which is no more relevant politically. In other areas, non-alignment still has a role to play. So with that kind of vast experience, India can definitely a bridge between the developed and the developing world. Last slide, please. Last slide, please. So now the ball is in our court. We have to play it very carefully so that the global south as well as the north can look at us in a positive perspective and give us the rightful place which we deserve. And for this, India has a better chance to. Thank you very much once again for your patient listening, and all the best. If you have any doubts, you can comment that. You can post your comments, no problem at all. I'll take it as it has to be taken up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for addressing the webinar. There is a two questions posted by the participants in the comment section.
Yes.
I think it is for Vinod sir as well as Muralidhar sir, both.
Should we take the questions at the end?
At the end,
Okay,
it
sir.
will be
Fine,
better.
fine, fine.
Yeah,
Let all the
it's better we
presentations
take
be
it at the
over.
end
Yes,
so that others
that's
can.
better, sir.
Yeah.
Fine,
Yeah,
sir. Fine. We will take at the end. Okay.
yeah.
So now I would like to call again Mr. Sharan Patil. Sharan Patil, Faculty Department
Student.
of English, to introduce our another resource person of today's webinar, Professor Y. Surendra Kumar sir, Professor Department of Political Science, Bangalore University, Bangalore. Uh, so over to you, Sharan sir.
Thank you, sir. And it's my distinct honor to introduce today's eminent resource person, Dr. S.Y. Surendra Kumar, serving as Professor and Chairperson of Department of Political Science at Bangalore University, Bangalore. Dr. Kumar is a celebrated academician and thought leader in public policy studies. With over 20 years of teaching experience at post-graduation level, Dr. Kumar's academic credentials are impeccable. He holds an MPhil and PhD in South Asian Studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and MA in Political Science from Bangalore University. As editor-in-chief of Journal of Contemporary Politics and e-newsletter Rajniti, Dr. Kumar has significantly contributed to academic discourse. His extensive body of work includes 70 research publications, numerous contributions and to edited books, and over 150 presentations and lectures at national and international seminars, conferences, and workshops. His area of interest are Indian foreign policy, with a focus on US and China relations and South Asian security. His recent collaborative research projects completed in 2024 explored the socio-economic impact of financial inclusion initiatives on marginalized communities. Professor Kumar's recent publications include From Quad 1.0 to Quad 2.0, The Persisting Discourse in the New World Politics of Indo-Pacific, which was published in 2024 in Routledge Publications, and also many insightful articles in the Journal of Contemporary Politics and Social Science in Perspective. With a global perspective gained from visits to Belgium, the CES Republic, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and UAE, Dr. Kumar brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our forum today. Sir, we are very happy that you are with us today, sir, and we welcome you, sir. The stage is all yours. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you, and good afternoon to one and all. So it gives immense pleasure and also honor to be part of this esteemed guest. And firstly, I would like to thank Hari sir for thinking of me to be part of this webinar, and Tamanna sir for extending the invitations. So I'm very happy that all the other my senior teachers, Professor Vinod, Professor Muralidhar sir, Professor Yatnu sir, so all of you are part of this, and all of you are already spoken immensely on the global order and what the India's role, what should be India's role. So in that way, you have made my task very easy. And particularly Muralidhar's presentation, sir, we talked about how India can be a major player or a global player. So presently, my presentation would be, because a lot of debate is going on the new world order or an extended world order. Despite all the things, the point I'm trying to argue is that whatever might be the world order, I'm sure India is one of the key player who can play a very dominant role in near future. And already, despite being India a very powerful country with regard to military, with regard to nuclear, with regard to economic growth and other aspect, but there is also one critical aspect where India needs to put in more effort to ensure that they become a very dominant and a significant player in the global arena. So that is what I'm trying to focus on, the human capital. See, many of these scholars, a lot of studies have been done, like how China and India were together in the 1970s, and what transformed with China did not happen much with India, precisely because of the human capital. So the entire my presentation I'll be focusing on that how India can be a major player in whatever the world order, provided it sets its house in order with regard to the human capital. So I'll be talking about India's global ambition and how this human capital becomes a very significant factor. So I've divided my presentation into two sections. The first section I'll be focusing on the human capital itself. So what exactly constitutes the human capital and what are the scholars emphasizing in this human capital theory all about. And second thing, in that human capital includes several aspects, but in that I'll be precisely focusing on education, how education can play a very dominant role in terms of ensuring or enhancing India's global power and the global reach. So as we all know that the with regard to human capital simply means that the knowledge, whether it is health, education, skill, employments, all these things contribute basically to enhance which or it is being inculcated by the population over the years so that they will be able to contribute for the society and also contribute for the economy. So that way human capital becomes very significant aspect. But one of the major debate in the world has been always been there. Countries, developing countries like India, should it focus more on development? Should it focus more on military? Should it focus more on security or focus on human capital? But in the case of India, it's trying to balance all this. But somewhere down the line, we are still lacking with regard to the human capital, which is very important. So several scholars, like we can see Amartya Sen, has clearly articulated and compared that how country like China was able to sustain the economic growth for a longer duration. India has also done, but the fundamental difference is that the human capital was not as strong, which is with regard to China. India case it is not strong. So it has been argued by Amartya Sen and even Abhijit Banerjee, Nobel Prize winner for economics, have articulated that how health and education becomes very critical. So that is the area which need to be focused. And Muralidharan sir rightly pointed out that if India needs to be a global player, and these are the areas which India needs to focus in a rigorous way, including, for example, the well-known scholars like Jagdish Bhagwati, who wrote a very famous book and very popular one that is In Defense of Globalization. So he also articulated that why growth matters. So when he talked about why growth matters, he has clearly articulated that the need of or the key factors like health, education, and the skills which become very important to sustain the growth. Although presently India's growth rates is better off compared to the European countries, compared to US and also China, but the point is that if we have more enhanced quality human capital, I think the growth rate can be sustained more and the society can also be made more inclusive in nature. So that's the reason why Raghuram Rajan, the former governor of Bank of India, has clearly talked about and rightly made a very valid point that if the country's 30 to 40% children are malnourished, then these are going to be the workforce in the 2040s, and how they are going to compete as a quality labor and also compete with artificial intelligence and the robots, which are going to determine the job market and also going to determine the service sector altogether. So in that way, how prepared are we? So it's very important to invest in human capital and the governance, which is more important. Although most of the states in India are trying to go towards manufacturing sector, focusing on manufacturing sector creates more employment. Of course, it will contribute to the economy, but what is more important is also investing in the human capital, which is very important. So even one of the latest book by Ashok Modi, the Princeton University professor, has talked about like the India broken. So he talked about like how India has been betrayed because successive governments, irrespective of whichever party came to power, they always not have much given due importance for human capital, and that's the reason why India is facing a heavy price for that kind of neglecting the human capital altogether. So a lot of studies have been done with regard to India and China, and where the many people tend to argue the reason why China has ahead precisely because of the human capital. If you see the World Bank Human Capital Index of 2020, where India clearly lacks. So of the 55, the 174 countries, India is ranked 116. So the score is also very less. So with regard to human capital, the study done by World Bank, countries like other countries like China's are way ahead with regard to the human capital index scoring. But nevertheless, the point which I'm trying to argue is that education is one of the key factors. So I'm not going to touch upon the health factor. Again, it will consume more time. So I'll be focusing only on education. So in this education, I have taken 2, 3 parameters to assess the areas where we need to improve strongly or how our education system is all about. So the first thing would be like talking about the entire education aspect. Secondly, I'll be focusing on the expenditure of the government or with regard to education, with regard to gross enrollment ratio, with regard to research and development, which is again a very key important, and the skill also becomes a very important aspect. So as we all know that education in the human capital theory, education is very important because through education you can address the several issues and the problems in the society. You can also transform the society. You can contribute for the growth of the economy. At the same time, the personality of the individuals also is enhanced, and skills can ensure better jobs, and the deserving jobs can also be provided with regard to human capital theory, we can see. So if you see, according to the All India Survey of Higher Education 2021-2022, the data which has been released, so you can see that the number of colleges in India is increasing year by year. So there are more than 45,000 colleges in India recognized by the UGC. There are more than 1,000 plus universities are there, and there are more than around 17 women universities, exclusively women universities, and there are more than thousands of well-established, what we can say, institutions, research institutions, which are contributing for the growth and the quality of education. But overall, despite the increasing number of colleges, universities, the question arises is, are they providing quality education? Here our Indian education system is focusing or ensuring quality on par with the developed countries. So in that way, we have to put a big question mark over it. So we'll take 2-3 parameters and see where the education as a key factor to strengthen the human capital, where we stand today. So if you see the education spending, so according to the national education policy, which is considered to be a path-breaking policy, because after 1980s, there's not been a much education policy, comprehensive one, and this is a very comprehensive national education policy introduced in 2020, which clearly articulated that the government should spend around 20% over the next 10 years. If they spend 20% of the budget on the education, things can be better, the quality of education can be improved. But it is easier said than done. And even Niti Aayog also clearly highlighted in every successive report, articulated that Indian government should be spending at least 6% of its GDP on education. Although presently India is spending less than 3% on the education, but there's a scope for spending more than 6% is what which the Niti Aayog is arguing. But when you compare with the other countries like OECD countries, they are spending around average around 5.2%. If you see the other countries, countries like Brazil, countries like other countries which are spending more on education. For example, Brazil is spending around 5.8%, Bhutan is spending around 8%, South Africa is spending 6.6%, and the US, UK, China. So they're all spending more than what India is spending. So the overall point I'm trying to say is that the spending on education should increase. So that is where it becomes very important. Although if you see the 2022-23, the state and the center together expenditure on education was close to around 7.5 lakh crore, again which is less than 3% of its GDP. So there is an emphasis that India should spend more than 3% on education, which is very significant. Even this year's budget 2024-25, 7% slash was there with regard to education. However, the recent budget presented by the NDA government, we can see there is a 1,25,000 crores have been allotted for not just education, it includes skill, includes employment also. So that is a good gesture, but at the same time, still it is lower than what the India should be spending with regard to education, we can see. So apart from this, the quality of education can improve with the investment in the infrastructure in the colleges and university. At the same time, investing also, that is, or recruitment is also one of the very key factor for enhancing the quality of education. So consistently, UGC has been saying, or the MHRD has been saying that there's a need for improving the quality. So they're bringing new regulations on improving the enhancing the quality of education. At the same time, they're cutting down funds, not allowing recruitment to happen in many of the public universities. So many of the public universities are in a very pretty bad shape precisely because lack of permanent faculty members. So if you see the data as per the MHRD itself, and also the question answered by the Minister of Education in Parliament, clearly says that there are more than 6,549 teaching vacancy positions in central universities alone. So only in central universities there are 6,000 plus teaching vacancies, positions lying vacant. And if you see, 42% of the reserved posts for SC, ST and OBC are also vacant in most of the central university. So when you're not going to recruit teachers and expecting a quality education will be a very difficult task to be achieved. So you can see clearly, although the public expenditures from their own pocket on education is increasing, particularly in urban areas and all, but still at the same time, if you see the household expenditure, their expenditure on health is increasing, their expenditure on other aspects are increasing. Education still remains the less, and people go for public institutions is on a larger scale. So overall, the first aspect, I believe that to strengthen the human capital with regard to education, spending on education is very important. Despite the Niti Aayog report, despite the national education policy, so despite the experts emphasizing on it, so there is a need for that one. Second thing, if you see the gross enrollment ratio to the higher education, so India's gross enrollment ratio is around 28.4% of gross enrollment ratio. If you see the All India survey on higher education 21-22, the remaining reports is not yet out. So based on that, it is only 28.5%. If you see the country like US and UK, which are very high, even if you see the China itself, it is more than 60% gross enrollment ratio with regard to the higher education. So whereas in India, it is just 28.4%. Even NEP emphasized that we should be able to achieve 50% gross enrollment ratio by the year 2030. But unfortunately, we are in 2024. Although government, Prime Minister Modi had emphasized in 2016, by 2020, we should be able to achieve the gross enrollment ratio of 30%. But we are in 2024 and still struggling at 28.4%. So achieving 50% by 2030 would be a major challenge. We can see. So the gross enrollment ratio in higher education should be enhanced not just by creating more universities or more colleges, but what is required is more quality and more skill oriented education need to be created, appointing more faculties. So gross enrollment ratio is one where we are lacking. And the third important thing is quality of education can also be measured with using the global ranking. So generally, whether it is the students seeking admissions or teachers joining a college or university, always we tend to see the global ranking of that college or university to see whether we have better prospects in that universities and colleges. If you see in that global ranking, we can see, so among the top 100 universities in the world, so Chinese universities from China figure more, although in a double digit, but compared to India, India is not much significantly visible in this global ranking. To take, for example, the World Global Ranking 2024, according to the Times Higher Education, so only 44 Indian universities figure in the top 1,000 universities. So even IISc, the top leading institution, fully funded by the public, the government, you can see it is around 201 to 250. That is the ranking we can see for the IISc. Similarly, if you see the QS World Ranking Sustainability 2024, only 56 universities got ranked in this ranking, and then 27 universities were top within 1,000. So among the 1,000, only 27 Indian universities figure in the QS university ranking for sustainability. So Delhi University was the number one from India, but it secured around 220th rank. So you can see that none of the universities figured in the top 100. And even according to the report by ICEF Monitor, so it is argued that on an average, 2 million people or 2 million students go abroad for higher education. The students going for higher education, students going for studies it's abroad has been increasing. So gradually you can see. So it is estimated by 2025, more than 2 million people would be going to foreign countries for higher education, particularly US, UK, Canada, Australia, then Singapore, and even, of course, including China also. So many of the Indians would be preferring, including New Zealand, we can see. Our own RBI report, so Reserve Bank of report also clearly articulated that 2023 report of Reserve Bank of India that Indian government has lost around 80 billion in foreign exchange because 11 lakh students go abroad every year. So on an average, if 11 million, 1 million students tend to go abroad for education, so there's a lot of foreign exchange reserve loss for India. So why students are going abroad, the point I'm trying to argue is because They believe that the quality of education and the quality of skill they could attain and the job opportunities would be immense by going abroad and getting the degree rather than studying in many of the leading institutions, or they might not get in leading institutions in India. That could be also the reason why they uh, prefer the foreign universities. So overall, there's a need that India should figure in the top 100, or more universities should figure in the top 1,000 university. So there's a need to enhance the overall quality of education with regard to curriculum, with regard to infrastructure, with regard to skill which we teach, with regard to pedagogy, with regard to the recruitment we make. So overall, there is a holistic need for enhancing. It is there, but we need to improve it further to reach that high quality which is being provided at the Western countries. Of course, we are quality education is there, but I'm talking about the higher version of the quality. And the fourth important and the last section I would like to focus is basically the research and development. So R&D. So research and development is also one of the key. So why a country like Israel is becoming very powerful and have always been exporting more weapons to the world, precisely in the military and artificial intelligence point of view. It is precisely because of the technological the edge they have is because of the R&D. So we can see with regard to research and development. So first we'll talk about the kind of the quality papers, citations and other aspects. If you see that the Chinese scholars are among the more compared to India, I'm just seeing India and China. So you can see Chinese scholars more figure with regard to chemistry, with regard to mathematics and with regard to artificial intelligence. So according to the QS 2023 report, 2017 to 2022, the research output. So India is the fourth largest country with regard to the research output, that is in terms of research paper. So India was able to produce around 1.3 million research papers, whereas China was 4.5 million, America 4.4 million, UK 1.4 million. But with regard to the citations of these research paper, we can see India is ranked ninth, fourth in terms of large scale research papers being published, but ninth in terms of citations. And if we talk about the R&D spending, so every government has an obligation to spend more on research and development. So if you see that as per the 2023 data by OECD, we can see 2023. So the government of India is spending just around 0.65% of its GDP on research and development, which is very less. Earlier in 2020, India was spending around 0.8%. Now it has come down to 0.6%, which is very less compared to Brazil, which is spending 1.16% on R&D of a total GDP, and South Africa 0.83%. China spends around 2.54%. America is the top one, spending 3.64%. Second is China, spending around close to 2.5, and Europe country also spending more than 2% of its GDP on R&D. We can see. So the Indian government spending on R&D is still lacking. Although Indian companies spent around 6.651 trillion dollars in 10 years. In the last 10 years, the Indian companies have spent 651 trillion dollars. They have spent. In that, only 1% is spent on R&D. So the Indian companies are also not spending much on R&D. Neither the government is spending much on R&D. So basically, you can see the technological edge, the cutting edge. We may not be able to have an advantage with regard to the vis-a-vis the developed countries. So even in the budget also, we can see this year's budget also, a lot of funds were allocated for the R&D, encouraging private sectors to contribute significantly in terms of collaboration, other things. But still, even the NEP also talked about National Research Foundation. So under the NEP, but what progress it has made, so we have no much of idea. Now coming to the second aspect of within the R&D is also patents. So if you talk about the patents aspect, we can see that as per the 2021 data, so China had filed around 3.4 million patents. So filing is one thing and getting the patent approved is one thing. So just filing doesn't mean that the patent is awarded, but there is also the urge of getting patented. So that is also important. Participation also becomes very important. So 3.4 million applications for patents was filed by China, and then but 80% of this patents and 60% of the patents are more or less 60 to 80% of the patents are related to artificial intelligence. So among the globe world, the highest patents filing comes from China, of which 50% is on artificial intelligence. Means they are trying to push. Of course, the patent granted may not be favorable towards China, but the point is that there is serious effort from the Chinese government with regard to R&D, with regard to the patents filed, with regard to the artificial intelligence patents. So global patent, 50% of the patents are filed by the Chinese. Another important interesting thing is that with regard to India, you can see it is only 3% of the patents filed are related to the artificial intelligence, whereas China it is more than 50% to be, we can see. And interestingly, the more number of patents which is filed from China are the residents of Chinese. So non-resident Chinese filing patents is very less. Within the case of India, it is reverse. 70% of the patents filed by the Indians are non-residents Indians or living in the other developed countries. Only 30% of the patents are filed by the Indians who are residing in India. So that kind of differences you can find that there's a serious differences even with regard to intellectual property index, which has been published by the American Chambers of Commerce. Also clearly talks about that India is ranked 42 among the 55 with regard to intellectual property index. So you can see whereas countries like India's it is around 38% scoring. So whereas if you see the US 90%, the 10th country that is Switzerland 10%. So the point I'm trying to say is that the R&D India spending is less in terms of publication, citation. We are gradually increasing, but more efforts should be made to come up with a global contribution with regard to citation, with regard to quality of papers and R&D and all the other aspects. And the finally, skill is also important. Employment and skill. I think a lot of issues have been discussed. So the recent Lok Sabha elections also was clearly focusing on employments and other aspects. But nevertheless, government also keeping those political verdict in mind. You can see in the recent budget, more budget is allocated for education, skill, and employment. So nevertheless, the point finally I would like to conclude that human capital becomes a vital factor for India if it needs to play a major role in the world order. Whatever might be the world order, of course, India would be a key player because of its other strength like democracy, the values which we cherish, democracy and the diversity in India which we have, and the strength with regard to IT sector, with regard to labor, with regard to the other aspects. We can see India has a lot of advantage, but this human capital could be an added advantage, or rather than it will be a weakness for us because if we can't improve on the human capital. So overall, I conclude by saying few points. That is one, that is there is a need to make basic education accessible to all, irrespective of geography, irrespective of social groups. So making access education is one. Second thing is also strengthening the financing of education is also. We have to make education affordable because we cannot leave it to the private sector for the education sector to flourish. We also public universities, public colleges have major role in that one because many of the top intellectuals have got their education from public universities only. So that we have to. So it has to be spending has to be increased, and at the same time the strengthening of technical and occasional education is also very critical role. Apart from this also we have to see that there is a need for industry and the education collaboration. So although now according to the NAC and other requirements, UGC guidelines, colleges and universities are making serious efforts to ensure that there is an industry and education connectivity, whether it in the curriculum, whether it is internship and several other things. So that is a point which we have to make. And finally, there is also need for mobility and flexibility of labor market. So it should not be too much concentration of labor market in the one region or one particular social group. It has to be inclusive. So overall, there's a need for an inclusive education. At the same time, more spending on R&D and other things. So overall, strengthening of human capital, not just education, health, and other things, which can really transform India into a truly global player. India wants to be the largest economy, fine, it can happen. Now we are in the fifth, we will reach the third also. It is not going to be a difficult task. But what is required is that human capital can really make India a global player and whatever the world order is. So thank you one and all for your patience listening, and any questions, clarification, I'll be very happy to receive it.
Thank you, sir, for delivering lecture on the topic India's role in the new global order. Now we move forward for our last session. For this, I would like to call again Srimati H.S. Desai to introduce our another resource person of today's webinar, Dr. Srimati B.R. Patil, Madam. Desai, Madam, over to you.
Yes, thank you, sir. Good evening to all. It is my honor and privilege to introduce dynamic and inspirational woman, Dr. Basav Rajeshwari R. Patil, Madam. Madam, presently working as an associate professor in Department of Political Science, Government First Grade College, Dharwad. Madam has completed her UG, PG and PhD from Dharwad University. Today, we are very fortunate to hear from Madam. Madam is a member of various academic bodies and associations in India, such as member of Karnataka State NEP 2020 Political Science and Public Administration Syllabus Committee, member of Indian Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi. Madam is also a member of Local Investigation Committee, Raichur University, Raichur, Karnataka. Madam is a member of executive body, member and of IIPA local branch, Dharwad. Madam is a member of Dharwad ZPSV EEP Book Purchase Committee 2022-23. Her extensive body of work include 30 research articles in national and international journals. Madam has participated national and international level seminar, conferences and workshops. Madam has also chaired the session at national and international level. Further, Madam has organized several workshops at regional level. Madam had successfully did the role of convener at national level conferences and seminar. With a career spanning decades, Madam has carved a path of excellence marked by profound achievements and unwavering dedication. So today we are very fortunate to hear you, Madam, and your unparalleled expertise will surely help our webinar today. With this brief introduction, once again, I welcome you, Madam, for this webinar and I request Madam to deliver the topic. Madam, please.
Madam, kindly unmute yourself.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, now it's fine, Madam.
To all, Professor Yatnur sir, the inaugurator of the webinar, Chief Guest Professor Harish Ramaswamy sir, my best teacher and a mentor, keynote speaker Professor MJ Vinod sir, resource person Professor Muralidhar sir, Professor Surendra Kumar sir, and president of today's webinar and principal Dr. Tamanna sir, and all my colleagues and participants. I thank you all for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts about India's role in the new global order. The earlier lectures have cleared to us what the new global order is and what role is India having and what challenges India having. So I'll just, I would like to discuss about why world is looking at India and why India's role is becoming important in new global order. To me, the new global order is a word that is rapidly shifting from a multipolar reality to an international system that is exposed to profound instability and slightly righteous too. According to me, this is not an order that works for all. I mean, the system is not worried about including all, and hence we need to rethink about the new global order, which must work for all and include the underrepresented majority of this planet. If you will agree, even in the so-called multipolar world, we had an element of lack of inclusivity. The world institutions did not properly handle the crisis like major power conflicts, pandemics, climate change, refugee crisis, and violent extremism, illicit profiteering from natural resources, and many such things, thus leaving the weak and underrepresented to fend themselves. So there is a need to work towards inclusivity, and actors like the UN should play a proactive role in bringing together the unrepresented and handhold them to play a role in uh, evenly distributing the proceeds of development and share a common future. However, the experience so far is not very encouraging, as UN seems to be working dependently, and that the major actors, especially the P5 countries who are economically powerful, are not keen on common future. Despite their liberal political stance, Palestine, Ukraine, Myanmar, Africa are some examples of this neglect. To address these problems, the world, which is not included in the growth, is trying to find solutions. Of course, without much expecting from UN, is keen on more cooperations between countries. As a result, more international groups are emerging, and this is looking towards a better leadership to create a strong global civil society which can strongly say that genocide is not a solution for anything or everything. Our interests are not in competition, not to attack on sovereignty, and work for peace and sustainability. As a result, countries like India, which is a largest democracy with the diversity, having a largest population, a huge young demography, growing GDP, and fifth largest economy, has invested its future in the leadership role for this new world order. To see that it is more even, justifiably distributing the world's natural resources, investing workable and feasible partnerships, and finding solutions, and giving a positive agenda of growth with equity. Because India is growing and we want a better place in and around. And the world is also finding more reasons to engage with India because India's geopolitical location is increasingly becoming very important to the world because of its Indo-Pacific policy in this region, which is an economic dynamo of the world, and we are at the heart of this region. In this sense, we are becoming important center of the global South in its evolution and journey. The countries in this region believe in the leadership of India because we respect the sovereignty of other nations, whereas our neighboring country, China, is not. And to find a leadership in this region, which is engaging in this kind, is what I see as India's role is changing in the world order. It is, in simple terms, a role of India from passive participant in a dominant global order to an order where India is becoming the global manager. You can see the emergency conditions around the world, especially from last 2 decades. If there is any global emergency, India is among the first countries to respond and to reach to help. We are also providing public goods even to the developed countries. India is world leader in case of IT. Also, India has known as the back office of the world. We are also recognized as the economic engine of the world. India is thus moving towards a new sort of an alignment in the global order that has lent it a role which is paradigm shift from its era of non-alignment to an era of multi-alignment. Because the primary interest, I can say a domestic interest of India is about overall development. Because we can see, especially from in last 2 decades, all governments talk about development and infrastructure. So for that, to prepare itself for the next industrial revolutions, to develop manufacturing capacity, bring more capital, nurture the talents of its people in various fields, manufacture more public goods, easy immigrations, because as earlier speaker said, India need to create jobs for its young generation or young population. According to some informations, India has to create 10 million jobs every year. To ease this task, India want easy immigrations and a strong defense system. All these things are important for us because we are a young country with more young population, which is aspiring better and sustainable standards of living. For this, We are in the era of multi-alignment, and the world is also interested in India because of these reasons. So here I can say that foreign policy and domestic policy are interrelated. I mean, they can't be divorced from each other. There is a natural relation or organic relation between what we advocate domestically and what we execute as a foreign policy. So our growing interest in providing better conditions for our people, especially young population, of course, within the country and around the world, is basically our domestic interest, and it is influencing our foreign policy also. That's why India, as you all know, is having a good relationship with US. But if we go back and look at the India-US relation especially during Indo-Pak war, US was more pro-Pakistan. But now the condition has changed, and we are having a strategic, comprehensive global partnership between us. And as far as concerned to Russia, we are having a relation which is more about our defense requirements. With Israel, Ukraine, and Palestine, also we are having relations. This includes both, as many said, offenders and victims. It is, of course, a neutral status and a position that is morally upstanding to advise and guide nations. We are having a positive relation with most of the country, and we have an Indian in almost every country. See, for example, from security to technology, Indians are playing a vital role around the world. According to the Ministry of External Affairs, there is a person of Indian origin or citizenship in every country or the territory in the world, except very few places. About 4 billion Indian origin people are in US, and Indians are playing an important role in the entire mainstream of that country. Over the years, people of Indian origin have served as the heads of governments around the world. I mean, we are at the position of policy making around the world. India's diaspora, which is largest in the world, is known for its achievements, has helped to strengthen India's position as a soft power around the world by its contribution to various walks of life. It also been an influential force in foreign policy making too. That's why when India speaks, when India speaks, our voice is heard and respected much. So in this background, world is rediscovering India, and India is rediscovering the world with its new priorities to build bridges, to go beyond differences, to seek common ground, to be the wise for peace. By civilization ethos, India's belief in one earth, one life, and one family, which was the tagline of G20 summit also, can drive the world to find a solution to unexpected changes, challenges, and threats which the world is facing. India, by its independent action, is able to assert the rights of the weak and the other who are sidelined because of their disposition in matter of economy, poverty, civil wars, and the interference by the powerful, creating a new kind of imperialism. Here we can remember the words of Von Goethe. He said, "A nation that doesn't honor its past has no future." So India, with its culture and higher values, it has created its niche or place in the new global order, carving for itself an identity that is completely Indian, which is more Bharat, I can say. Thus, in conclusion, I can say that despite a definite role for India in the new world order, it's not that we do not have challenges, as our earlier speakers also discussed about the challenges with the statistics. In retaining it, a permanent place for India in UN Security Council, UNSC, is yet far of dream. We need to work on our economic front to achieve socio-economic equity in our society, because the world is looking at us to create a peaceful, the world which is based on equality, and we need to create socio-economic equality in our own society. We need to fight the failed states in the neighborhood, and also we don't have an easy neighborhood also. and the terrorism, and we need to balance our relationship in matters of our priorities of domestic politics and our role in international arena. Here, I feel that a role of an Indian citizen is also more important in creating a majority government which can independently and strongly make decisions in domestic and international matters. We, while measuring the role for India in the new world order, will have to desperately work towards just and sustainable peace for Ukraine, for Russia, Palestine, Israel, and for the world. Because the impact of these kinds of confrontation and conflicts are not confined to a small area. It just spread to the corners of the world and affect all of us in so many ways: our food security, our energy security, supply lines, our prospects for developments, and many things are getting affected. So to handle these situations, the world need a leader who is having wisdom, caution, and foresight, and set the peace to make a world a better place. A peace in the line with the UN Charter and international law is what Mr. Guterres argued as this is an obligation to respect the territorial integrity of sovereign states. But beyond these, the other immediate crisis, the international community must strengthen the global peace and security architecture to address threats and challenges that were inconceivable when the UN Charter was drafted, such as the climate crisis, artificial intelligence, or cyber weapons, etc. And India undoubtedly has a role in it, is my concluding opinion. Thank you all for patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for delivering lecture on this webinar. I take the permission from the resource person, keynote speaker, as well as chief guest of this webinar. There are some questions raised by the participants. On behalf of participants, I will be convincing the message to you people, and you can also see on the screen what is the question and who has been asked. So this is the first question asked by Kamal Nabi Khan. The Indian government often states that its relations with the world are strong, but many international news channels do not prioritize their country's relationship with India in the same way. Sir, please.
I think Vinodji is the best person to answer
I
this.
just put up my mic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a matter of perception and one's understanding of how relations evolve in a particular context, time frame, and regional order, world order. And I think there is no finality to the type of image that one can have about how relations uh, evolve between countries. When I say that, what I mean is that countries also prioritize issues in the context of a relationship. I mean, that's what we see, isn't it? For example, George Bush was there and Manmohan Singh was there as prime minister. At that particular point of time, there were a variety of reasons why they prioritized the nuclear issue, leading to the signing of the nuclear deal. At the same time, it does not necessarily mean that we didn't have differences over how to go about implementing the nuclear deal. I mean, there were a variety of issues that came up. The plus point for United States perhaps was that they got India around to accepting, agreeing to have at least 14 of their nuclear reactors under the safeguards arrangement of the International Atomic Energy Agency, isn't it? So from their side, it served two purposes probably. One, to reach out to a large Indian nuclear market, which perhaps is still evolving. Secondly, India also used that negotiating bridge to perhaps also ensure that the Americans stand by us when it came down to our membership of the nuclear suppliers group. So the question is, how do you conceptualize, how do you understand a scenario in a particular, it has to be contextualized. I think that is extremely important. We can't generalize. I mean, because, for example, going back to the 50s, I mean, John Foster Dulles used to say that if you are not with us, you're against us. That's what he used to say. Probably when the Gulf War started, I'm just trying to recall who the defense secretary was, but he also said something similar. But India disagreed on this on both occasions, isn't it? Today, the Americans don't say that. They have come around to accepting the fact that there can be a gray area and there can be healthy differences, technical differences, some trade issues, nuclear issues, climate issues, a variety of issues. We have healthy differences. We accept that reality. That is the turnaround. So we don't have to necessarily look at a relationship purely in zero-sum terms. We have had differences with Russians also, with the Soviets also. 1968, Soviets decided to supply arms to Pakistan, and we actually questioned them on this issue, isn't it? So at the same time, the relationship was stable. It doesn't mean that we can't have differences. Okay, so I think some people say that there was a dehyphenation of the relationship when it came down to United States, Pakistan, and India. Okay, and hyphenating the relationship in the context of India and China. Okay, when it comes down to India's role in Quad, for example. So this is a matter of perception. Okay, but we'll have to be very specific in terms of what context and issue one may raise on a question like this. But your question is important, I don't deny.
Thank you, sir, for clarifying the answer. Now the second question,
No, sir.
which is
A small addition from my side.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, totally I agree with Professor Vinod. And my submission here is, yeah, I do agree in the 50s and 60s, India never appeared in the US foreign policy affairs. India never a priority area. Not only India, even South Asia. The great Secretary of State Henry Kissinger once said, Indo-US relations is relations of unfriendly friends. But the things have changed after 1998 second nuclear test. Initially, America was not happy with the Indian nuclear test. Rather, listed many of our companies into a blacklist. And once India signed a nuclear deal with America in 2005, things have totally changed. And the group of nations, so-called NSG, recognized India's stand. And now, for everything, America need India. Of course, India need America. So, what I mean to say here is, in international relations, two things are there. One, the relation is always a conflictive one, no matter which country it is. But at the same time, second important aspect is relations are dynamic also. So things are changing now. Definitely, there is a good relation between India and America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, there is another participant who has asked the direct question. India has been playing a neutral role in the world issues taking place. Will this affect in India's emergence as a superpower? Yeah, this question is asked to Muralidhar, sir.
Yes. Muralidhar, sir.
Thank you very much. And what I feel is that it's no way going to affect India's role or India's emergence as a superpower. See, recently, our very active and dynamic External Affairs Minister Jaishankar was telling most of the Western countries and Europe think that the problem of them is a problem of the world. Whereas if there is a problem to India or any of the Asian countries, they are not at all bothered. So it was a very blunt reply by the External Affairs Minister. In this connection, I want to tell that the earlier position or the stand which India used to take is completely different, especially after Manmohan Singh became the Prime Minister, and more so with Modi continuing as the Prime Minister for the last 3 terms. I'm very much sure that it is no way going to affect India's position as an emerging power. Definitely, because we are here to say what has to be said in the right way. Earlier, that was not the case because Nehru followed one policy and Indira Gandhi followed the same thing till 1991. So thereby, people are thinking that India is a very soft power and it can be managed, but it's no more friends. If something is wrong, let us put it directly. If we are affected, when, for example, when we were the victims of terrorism, we have been repeatedly telling the Western countries, especially, that there is a problem and you have to look towards us. But they never bothered till that 9/11 attacks took place. Then they wanted the whole world to stand behind them. No doubt India stood behind them because we were the victims. But the Americans never bothered, or the Western countries never looked towards India. So thereby, the time has come for us to stay firm and put our foot forward so that the world will follow us rather than we following the world, even if there is no mistake on our part. Thank you very much.
So can I make a point, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. See, India's neutral position on global issues is not something new. It has been there since the India became independent. So whether it is Nehru till Modi, you can see there's been consistency with regard to India's position on global issues. So whether it is Palestine, whether it is the Hamas issue, or whether it is Syria, or whether it is Ukraine. But the point is that India has always voted either in favor or against, depending upon how the other countries also vote. So India believes in a multi-alignment. It is being continued. But I somewhere down the line believe that this kind of continuity with regard to holding on a neutral position on global issues can fetch us many points, brownie points, not in a short term, but not for a longer term, because already many countries, particularly America and the European countries, have already clearly articulated that India needs to come firm with regard to the Ukraine, what the Russia has been doing. So India cannot completely, attend the G7 summit and then go to Moscow and then again build relations with Moscow. So many of the European spokesperson as well as the American scholars have also argued that it is high time that India has to come firm or come clean on the position. But India has always articulated that we are an independent country and we tend to multi-align. That is fine. But when we want to become a superpower, I think somewhere down the line we have to take a very critical or a crucial positions, because we can't be holding on to these neutral positions. Okay, and with regard to Russia-Ukraine war, India and China have always voted in the same pattern. Keeping our own interest in mind, we have voted in that way. That is fine. But ultimately, in the long run, I think somewhere India has to take a firm position. We can't tell to Israel that when we are with you, you bombard whatever way you want the Palestinian. At the same time, we can't tell to Hamas that, okay, we will also support the Palestinian cause, but we will not give complete free hand to attack Israelis. So somewhere India has to take a firm position, which is very much required, because that is also one of the criteria or a credibility of a superpower. So at present juncture, India did not take that kind of stand. But in future, I think surely India would be compelled to take this kind of position, which India need to be prepared.
Can
Thank
I
you, sir,
add
for
something?
your. Yes, madam, please.
According to me, India, it is not going to affect India because of its neutral stand, because India is not and should not have a habit of finding solutions for every other international issues like West, where they are behaving as if they are finding solutions for every international problems. India believes that the countries which are having conflict should find solutions in a regional level, because we are very much affected by such conditions. So it is not going to affect India, and as we all know that every country is important, so they should find solutions between them. And in that regard, India can lead or guide other countries.
Can I just,
Please.
yeah, can I just reflect on this whole concept, idea of neutrality? Because, right since our independence, this whole idea of neutrality, that Indian foreign policy has been neutral. I mean, again, going back to John Foster Dulles, he's the one who first used that term, that Indian foreign policy, non-alignment is neutral, isn't it? But I think if you read Michael Brescher's interviews with Krishna Menon, it's a huge, solid book, there he very clearly counter-argues that. He says India's position is not neutral. It has never been neutral. And actually, it was a very positive approach in the context of the time frame and variety of reasons he gave, Krishna Menon gave. Likewise, we come down to the Ukrainian issue also. Actually, one can probably say it is. Again, using the term neutrality can be sometimes problematic, because some have used the term in the context of India's stand on Ukraine as if to suggest that it is studied neutrality. Okay, conceding that that is okay, I think there are many reasons for it. But the counter argument to that is what Jaishankar would be saying, probably, that it is a consistent stand. It is not neutral. It is not neutral. So it is something that is steadfast based on the history of Indian foreign policy right since independence. Okay, if that is so, then the same argument can be used in so many different contexts going backwards to suggest that we have been neutral, when actually it perhaps was not neutral. Okay, so I think looking at this Ukrainian crisis, I think the overall sense one gets is there has been some sort of a fragmented global response. And this fragmented global response is perhaps reflective of what Jaishankar told that interviewer, I think 6 to 8 months back, that Europe has to get out of a certain mindset. That is what he said. And what he suggested, that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but it's not the reverse. It's not the reverse. So that can also be some sort of so the question is, if one looks at it from this perspective, I think probably India's stand on Ukraine is driven by its national security interests, by its economic interests. Okay, it's driven by concerns regarding India's economic security. Also, the history of our relationship with the Soviet Union and with Russia since the Soviet Union collapsed. So I think one can broad-based say that many countries have not taken a clear stand also, except that the hardcore countries involved in the crisis in Europe, again, there is a divide about whether it was also proper to perhaps take up the case of Ukraine's membership in NATO, the way the Europeans powers took it up and where the Americans took it. Okay, and I think so there is always this dissonance or uncertainty about clarity when it comes down to global diplomacy. When the Khashoggi case took place, I'll just stop here. When the Khashoggi case took place, there were a lot of, views that were being expressed about lack of clarity in the Trump administration stand on the Khashoggi's case. And perhaps it was reflective of the type of headway that the United States was making with Saudi Arabia, okay, at that point of time for a huge defense deal. Okay, so that's how the interests seem to all play out in the context of these perceptions and misperceptions. Okay, I'm not saying that we are absolutely right on it, but I'm saying that there are these gridlocks, which sometimes, tends to become relatively hazy. Okay, so, but personally, I have I'm very hesitant to use the term neutrality in the context of Indian foreign policy. Okay, even in particular context, sometimes it may not necessarily be neutral. Maybe we have to look into what are those reasons and actors and context and time and the government in power, isn't it? Okay, so I think there are many, many incidents one can take like this. It's just my opinion.
Thank you, sir, for providing the answers, the questions raised by the participants. Another question is there for especially asked to Harish Ramswamy, sir. Recently, the Prime Minister met with the President of Ukraine and subsequently with the President of Russia. Does this create any gaps or tensions in the relationship between India and Ukraine? Already, the Vinod sir has given the opinion on the same topic. The question is also asked by the participants. On behalf of participants, I want opinion from the Harish Ramsamy sir. Sir, please.
I'm no expert. Let him carry the answer which Vinod has already given. Okay.
Fine, sir.
Tell Nabi Khan. Thank you.
And the last question I'm taking from the participants of this webinar. The direct question asked by one of the participants: is India's foreign policy for third world discriminated?
They need more clarity of the question. I'm not sure what the question is.
Might be they're asking, sir, whether India's foreign policy is more focused towards the West and third world countries are sidelined, if I'm not wrong.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
What did you say, Surendra? I didn't hear
No,
you.
no, sir. They're asking whether India's foreign policy is more obsessed with the Western countries or the West rather than focusing on the third world countries. So somewhere, whether India is neglecting the third world countries. That is what the point they're trying to say,
No,
if I'm not wrong.
I don't think so. Like,
Even say,
of course, to some extent, earlier this was the case with India. Our foreign policy was more focused with either Pakistan or China or even America. But now, after passing few years, if you look at the change in India's foreign policy, like neighborhood first, look east policy, or act east policy, then other attempts like G20, then our policy towards third world or developing countries. I don't think that we are neglecting the developing world and uh, Latin American or African nations. We have given equal importance to these nations also. And a small submission to the earlier question regarding India's uh, role in the Ukraine or Russia-Ukraine crisis, more particularly during our Prime Minister's visit to Russia. Of course, our Prime Minister has very clearly said that this is not the time to of war. ये युद्ध का समय नहीं है. Whatever differences are there, sit across the table and resolve the issue. And at the same time, I do agree that it is a high time India should become more active, proactive, or little assertive. And lastly, NAM means not neutrality. Non-alignment means it is not neutrality. What Nehru said, our leaders said. Acting based on the issue of or merit of the issue. Whenever America committed mistake or attacked any nation, India openly criticized, condemned the action of America, and also whenever Soviet Union did the same, then also India condemned the actions of Soviet Union. So basically, NAM is not a neutrality. Thank you.
I'll just
Thank you,
respond.
sir.
Yeah. Basically, see, when we say that India's foreign policy is more focused west, or somewhere down the line that they are not focusing on the third world countries, it is wrong to say, because we can see that from India has an advantage with regard to other countries compared to the third world countries because of the historical linkages, cultural linkages. So we always have a kind of bonding with the third world countries, one. And second thing, we can see that the Prime Minister Modi's efforts in terms of including African Union as a part of the G20 itself clearly indicates that the concern to make this G20 club a more inclusive one. And apart from this, if you see the Prime Minister Modi's swearing in ceremony, so first in 2014 it was the SARC leaders who were invited. Then 2019 we could see Southeast Asian countries were invited. or even if you see the Republic Day, Independence Day parade, and all the things where the chief guests are from the third world countries. So India is not shy from the third world countries. We could see. Apart from this, the humanitarian assistance India has provided, which is mainly for the third world countries. Even in the present budget, you can see the amount which India provides as an aid is for mainly the third world countries, is a mode where we trade and we provide aid, assistance, natural disaster relief. So we can see India invariably also focusing on third world countries, because these countries would also matter for the Security Council membership. Apart from this, the historical cultural linkages all there. But at the same time, we can also see that India also needs to become a global player, move on. So it's very important for India to engage with the Western countries or the other countries. So that is one. Second thing is we can also see that the somewhere down the line that China is filling the vacuum of India with regard to the third world countries. If you see the amount of China's trade, if you see the amount of China's military cooperation, if you see the China's infrastructure investment in third world countries is increasing compared to what India is doing. Somewhere down the line, many of the third world countries believe that more than India, it is the China which has been helping it out them or bailing out them. Of course, there is a lot of implications, challenges for wherever the China's aid or funding has happened. So we have seen what has happened in Sri Lanka, what has happened in Myanmar, or what is happening in Pakistan. But nevertheless, somewhere down the line, the third world countries believe that India is trying to move from its focus on third world countries to Western countries, allowing the China to make inroads. So it's very important for India not to lose the focus on the third world countries. At the same time, continue its engagement with the Western countries, which are both are very important for India's growth and prosperity.
Yeah.
I have a small question to Professor Vinod. Others can also answer. I really don't understand the idea of India being neutral. If you say it is not neutral, but if it doesn't take its stance on issues, how long are we going to survive like this? You want to be a superpower, but you don't want to involve yourself anywhere, and then you say, I don't want to take a decision, I want to play safe, I want to be like this. And at the same time, you claim that you are a third economic power, you are growing, and your economic strength has increased, and you want to help everybody. And there is another argument which Madam tried to put, that countries must resolve their own issues in their own region, etc., etc. If that is the case, then there is no question of balance of power. There is no need for you to have difference of opinion or any brotherly attitude like a country. So, do you really think that India should continue like this, or should India learn to take its own stance on issues, at least rhetorically? China, for example, is very clear on certain stance. So people look at China, and people are also afraid of China. Nobody cares about India because India doesn't have a stance. Look at what Surendra beautifully put it. You go to G7, and then from there you go to Russia. Whom are you pleasing, and how long do you want to please people?
Yeah, I think, as far as the Ukrainian issue is concerned, I think India is restrained and constrained by a variety of geo-economic and geopolitical and geostrategic factors. I think one has to look into those very, very seriously. It is not clearly a black or white for India, because we would also be inviting trouble in that case. So my larger sense is that I think this is a very lot of introspection has gone into this. Well, a number of reasons probably I stand corrected. One is I think it has to do with the long history of our political and strategic and defense cooperation with the former Soviet Union, and our dependence on Russia still continues in spite of diversifying. Okay, with a lot has happened in India-US relations in terms of defense cooperation since the Kitzleiter proposals in the late 1990s. Yet there's a the high level of dependence on Russia, given the fact that we co-produce a large number of items. Okay, so I think the question is, are we being neutral or are we being more pragmatic? Okay, Or is it a situation that we are caught between the devil and the deep sea? I mean, this is, I'm not simplifying it, but the fact is that it is a very hard, you know, decision for the government of India. I wonder whether any government in any political leader, Narendra Modi's chair, would who have taken a different stand. I have my doubts.
But yeah,
because this
but
is
at
the
the same
hardcore
time, you go
reality.
to
This is
UN
hardcore
and say,
reality. Yeah.
no, but you go
I
to
think
UN and say, I'm a Hindutva Rashtra.
I'm so sorry. See,
You
for
go to
example,
UN
within Quad also. Within
and you
Quad,
say,
if I
I'm a
may interrupt you,
Hindutva
Professor Hari.
Rashtra.
I'm so sorry. I want.
No, you go to UN and say you are a Hindutva Rashtra. There you want
Yeah.
to stake a claim.
I think, see, Professor Hari, I think it's a much larger issue. The issue is, see, within Quad itself, the Americans would brand us as being undecided. When Americans wanted us to contribute troops, have our men on the ground in Afghanistan, many people said we were undecided. I thought in
Yeah.
retrospect it was the right decision. In retrospect, right decision. We learned our lessons what happened in Sri Lanka. We were being more pragmatic. We were being more realistic. I think the same thing is happening in Ukraine. It is not a neutral stand. I mean, neutrality means something totally different when one conceptualizes it in political terms, in economic terms, in strategic terms, in military terms. So I think neutrality is not the same in all these contexts. So I think there is a beg to disagree that it is not neutrality. I think India is being more pragmatic. At the same time as I think Professor Yatnur said also in between somewhere, even when he visited, he has to visit Russia, he has to visit Ukraine also. I mean, this is not the first time it's happening. You can look at so many other events where you have gone to what we would perceive in a zero-sum perspective as a ally or as an adversary. So when we do not necessarily look at it as an ally or as an adversary, but when we can work with both simultaneously, this is not the first time this is happening. Even during the Gulf War also, I think we had, scenarios of this kind, first Gulf War and second Gulf War, in a variety of contexts. So fundamentally, I do not necessarily think, my hypothesis is that it's fundamentally not neutrality. It is to do with the logistics of of the way India's Soviet and now India-Russia relations have evolved historically and in the contemporary times. And it is not necessarily, like for example, like India not signing NPT does not necessarily mean that we are in favor of nuclear weapons. Definitely not. It's almost something similar. That India not criticizing Russia doesn't necessarily mean we condone killing of small children in hospitals. And Prime Minister Modi very clearly said that, isn't it? So I still have a problem. I may be wrong, but I still have a problem of using the term neutrality and that we are undecided. That it's a matter of perception.
I would rather say
it is very difficult to look at it in black or white terms. It is very difficult to look at it in black or white terms.
I would rather say, people like Jaishankar, should at least change these rhetorics and then say, all right, it's a pragmatic policy.
Yeah.
I can definitely appreciate that. Yeah, he should say that. You cannot use a English term which is neutrality and then say it doesn't mean neutrality.
Yeah, actually, it is wrong to say neutrality in this context. To be frank with you, I would go along with I always said it is pragmatic.
And also my second observation. I mean, Suri can also answer this.
Yes.
If you are unprepared for that role, if you are unprepared, why do you want to claim these things? You still have a domestic agenda. That's why I said there must be a relation between the two. You have a domestic unfulfilled agenda, and you still want to play a role. Look at China. Beautiful statistics was presented by Suri. How well they prepare themselves. And then they don't actually go to anybody's doorstep. By their own stance, they show, who am I? You got to respect them. But here you don't want to prepare yourself, but then you want to stake claims. And then you also say you want to be neutral. How many awkward, positions do you want to take?
It's not a neutral stand. I feel we are having conversation with most of the countries. And of course, we are a young country, we are growing, and we want more partnerships. In that regard, we cannot compare India with China, because China is already a superpower. They can, they can
Then
take a
stay
stand.
Indian.
But
Then stay Indian, Patil.
for growth, we need this. For our growth, we
Stay
need
Indian.
this, and of course,
Be
where
pragmatic.
India
I don't
is
need to
put
be
forward, forwarding
and
its
also
opinion,
become
but we are
US.
not forcing anybody
Yes,
to
yes.
follow them.
There was to remain,
Unlike
to
West, we
sustain
are not
our.
forcing
Sorry.
anybody to follow our.
See, this is exactly the kind of human nature I see. This is exactly the kind of human nature we see. I don't have capacity, but I want to be the vice chancellor. I don't have my ability, but I want to be something else.
Yeah.
It's a contradiction within.
Yes.
Sorry.
So that's what, yeah,
Sorry.
sir. That's what Hari sir was pointing out, sir,
I
Vinod
don't
sir.
agree, sir. India is
Rightly
having
that,
the ability, but
yeah.
we need a time.
So what sir was rightly pointed out, that how long we can carry forward with this balancing act. For example, as rightly sir, Vinod sir pointed out, of course we have issues. So when it comes to Russia-Ukraine war, so if you see the Human Rights Council voting, if you see the United Nations Security Council voting, so majority of the vote, when countries voted in favor of against Russia, India also did the same thing. Majority country voted against Ukraine, India also did. But when it came to critical issue, India abstained along with the China also. So this is the one example. Even with regard to Iran also, we
Correct.
can see the sanctions
Hundreds.
with regard to Palestine. So the question is how long we can sustain this balancing act, because we want to be a major power. Somewhere down the line, of course, we have our interests, so we are doing it fine. At the same time, we want to be proactive, means we have to take the strong and strict positions we can do. Even for example, when we say in the recent times, we can see neighboring countries, whatever the development is happening. So India is saying it is an internal matter. For example, what is happening in Bangladesh and what is happening in Pakistan economic crisis, the prime minister or the foreign minister did not utter much words with regard to the Pakistan, what economic crisis it was happening. Same with the crisis. So we cannot leave the neighboring countries at the crux saying that it is an internal matter, so that they should not interfere in our matter. That cannot be there. So you have to take a position in the real political world. If you want to be a
Yeah.
global power, you have to take a position. So like America takes a position that, okay, we will come to India, will not go to Pakistan. So we will supply weapons to Pakistan irrespective of India objects. So that kind of some position which the Americans can take. So that kind of firm position India also to take at the global level. So that is more important. So that's where we can see,
And
despite
Suri,
India's, yeah,
just to add to what you say, it's like, you are confusing yourself and confusing the world.
right.
Not once, quite often.
So
And,
many of the
you
third
may
world
be
countries
gaining
also,
somewhere. You may
yeah.
be gaining somewhere. But then please prepare yourself. Before you stake a claim, please prepare yourself.
See, for example, we tend to criticize the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. So, if you see
Yeah.
the former Foreign Secretary Sham Saran clearly articulate that we do not have the capital which the Chinese have. So, we do not have the alternative for the Belt and Road Initiative. That is precisely reason why many of the European countries also were part of the BRI. Of course, India has taken a right position not being part of the BRI, but at least India can think of exploring the possibility of not violating our sovereignty, but the other kinds of corridors which can be explored. So this is told by Foreign Secretary Sham Saran or with regard to some of the American scholars. So there is we can't provide alternative, means we need to come up. So for example, India has come up with Middle East Economic Corridor. That is fine. But can we match the way in which the Chinese are doing? Of course,
Chinese are doing
China's BRI has run into several problems, debt trap, all the things
problems.
are there. But are we ready to come up with our own kind of a model or economic model or something like that to the world, that here we are with this kind of model? So with this balancing act, we cannot continue with the kind of a alternative we are projecting. So what the American does with regard to some kind of a narrative or a model, so those kind of things, qualities can be inculcated to emerge as a global player. So of course, this is fine with the
See,
balancing act. It is very useful for India for growth, prosperity. But how long can we sustain this? That is the whole point. I think what Harish sir is also saying, and that's what I also feel.
yeah, because you want to dream big, prepare yourself, work hard. You look at your work culture. the way you were telling about education, forget about 6% GDP we have not been able to spend. And what are we talking about? Now, where are we going to come back? If for some people who went abroad, if they are doing very well, how long are you going to bask on their success? You have to do something here. You're so politically motivated for every small thing that you don't take decisions at all, many a time. And then you say not taking decisions are also decisions.
Sir,
Sorry.
yes, I totally agree with you, sir. And my last submission is that enough is enough, sir. Whatever political statements we are giving, that we are fifth largest economy, and shortly we are going to become third largest economy. That's okay to some extent, but hard reality is that still we are not in a position to get permanent membership to UN Security Council. So, what is the need in that direction? We have to think about that, and one must be very firm. It is a high time to assert ourselves at international level, not a
And
balancing act.
also, Yatno, we need to prioritize.
Yeah,
See,
exactly.
Farid Zakaria spoke so well about Indian issues. He said, we don't prioritize at all. You ask, what is your priority? Everything is your priority. How can you do that?
No, no more pleasing everybody. We have to take a firm stand. Then only we can go ahead and become a major power, if not superpower. Thank you.
Muralidhar is keeping quiet. Muralidhar sir,
No, no,
just
no,
some
no.
comments from
No,
your
these are
side.
very good opinions expressed.
Murali
But
sir
what
is
I must say
maintaining
is
neutrality,
that,
sir.
Not like that.
it is always good to
But I
take a
want to.
firm stand. I fully agree, sir.
Yeah,
It's
Professor
very
Vinod.
important. But see, the problem is we also have to be, as you rightly said, do we have the wherewithal, the consequences, intellectual, material, otherwise, to actually withstand the firm stand that we take? So that's why, since we do not have that at this point of time, diplomatically and otherwise, does it mean that we are taking a more pragmatic stand without necessarily being neutral? Even if Jaishankar has used that term, okay, which I may not agree with the use of that term, as I was saying right from the beginning, okay. So I think there are many pitfalls en route for us to take a firm stand. It's easy for now China to take a firm stand, as Surendra said. China can take a firm stand. It is 4 times our economy. It is almost like a global power, yet not a superpower. It's a regional superpower. There's no doubt about it. It has got a global network into BRI. The China Africa, nexus is of a kind that nobody else has at this point. Not in the United States has. Okay, and India is just over there, but I mean it's evolving. Not to that extent. China has many advantages. See, China is a regime, political regime that is of a different kind, where they can take firm decisions. India is technically a working democracy. It's technically a liberal democracy. There is a media. For example, I stand corrected. In 1991, I think it was late 1990s or early 90s, when Prime Minister, when S. Chandrasekhar was the Prime Minister, I think, if I remember, I stand corrected if I remember, India allowed US Air Force planes to US
Yeah,
Air Force planes to refuel
Refuel.
in Sahar
correct,
International Airport.
refueling.
That became such a big
It was
issue in
during the
Parliament and in the
That's during the
media.
Gulf
And
crisis.
immediately, after 2 days, the government said, no, we'll not allow any longer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is the type of pressure. China is different. See, when China says something, you cannot take it at face value, to be very frank with you. I mean, China, there was this whole image and perception about the peaceful rise of China. This is what actually Samuel Huntington predicted long back in 1950s itself in his Politics Among Nations. Samuel Huntington very clearly predicted what China
Samuel
is doing
Huntington.
now,
Yeah.
to be very frank with you. And that's why there is so much of difference of opinion between, say, John Mishmeyer, who's an offensive realist, and Kenneth Walsh, who's a defensive realist, over the role of China today. John Mishmeyer is a pragmatist. He's a hardcore realist. You may brand him anything. But the fact is, he says you have to call a spade ultimately.
Spain.
China's rise will not be peaceful. And we are also experiencing it in the region. Even we have borders with China. I mean, it's not like United States or European countries talking about China. We have borders with them. We are experiencing the problems with them on a day-to-day basis the last 2 to 3 years. So I agree with what you are saying, Professor Harish. But the problem is this. India, at this point of time of its economic growth, its nation building, we may think there is something elusive. There is something uncertain about the inability to take a decision. But I think one can probably give them some space.
Yeah. Professor Vinod, my problem is just this.
Yeah.
You can aspire, but prepare. You can dream.
Yeah.
You can dream, but plan it. You want to be a leader. Now, shape yourself up. But you are always trying to do something. Now, looking at people around you, but your problems are very different. Look at politics. You're too political. After politics, get into business. You don't do that. So instead of saying that, we have a lot of other things to concentrate, my request is please forget other things. Forget the world. Concentrate on your domestic politics, domestic development. Once you get the strength, then think of it. When you say that you are third in the economy, what is your per capita expenditure? What is your strength? You're so weak compared to, even Sri Lanka or neighborhood Bangla. So if you really are serious about staking a claim to certain position, my only request is prepare yourself. And there's enough time. 75 years is not a small time. You've wasted most of your time on unnecessary political agenda, which is only impressive to win an election. Post-election, what are you doing? Be it Congress or BJP. So I'm not saying that we should not stake claim, but my only request is please be much more, as you rightly pointed out, pragmatic in terms of both the relation between the domestic and the international arena, and then try to understand where you need to stand and how you need to prepare yourself for the next role. That's all.
Fine, sir. Your point is well taken.
Sorry.
Wonderful discussion.
Sometimes a disruptor throws something else.
And probably a variety of useful issues came up and perceptions.
Yeah, but we didn't hear Murli. I'm very keen. Murli, sir. Two sentences from your side.
Yes, sir. Before it, small, sir. I totally agree with you. The best example is even today we are not in a position to get, once again I'm repeating, not in a position to get permanent membership to UN Security Council, in spite of claiming that we are the 5th largest economy and shortly we are going to become the 3rd largest economy. Then what makes you to not to become a permanent member? This is the best example.
Sir, let me add.
Yeah.
So when I was making my presentation and also answering the question, I always made it before 1991 we follow a particular policy, but at least after 1991 we should have been a bit assertive in many of the cases.
You said that.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Let me tell you one thing. When our Prime Minister met his counterpart of Israel, immediately there was a reaction in the Indian media. Is he going to meet the leaders from the Middle East also? So that's what you have been telling. So you cannot balance and please both sides. You have to be on one side if at all you want to achieve your foreign policy objective. That's where we are still dilly-dallying. And take, for example, the South China Sea crisis also.
That is another major thing.
Yes, very hesitatingly we entered the crisis. By that time, China was already there in firmly. So in most of the cases, especially after 1991 and more so after 2001, there was still hesitancy on the part of India's foreign policy. Despite we are having one of the best external affairs minister, somehow the things are not being materialized as we wanted to, and as some of the people wants to see India in that position. Maybe,
but I will tell you, Jaishankar, I really appreciate. At least he has been very straightforward in several issues.
Very straightforward, very blunt also. Very blunt also. Very blunt. No external affairs minister was like that. I've seen.
Correct. Because he's not a politician.
Yeah, he was.
He's a bureaucrat.
Yeah, he was a bureaucrat.
Wonderful. Tamanna?
Thank you, sir. It was a very fruitful discussion on the given topic. So now I would like to call our beloved principal, Dr. Y. Tammanna, sir, for the presidential remarks. Sir, please. Sir, kindly unmute yourself. Just a minute, I will do. Okay, sir, now you can.
Thank you, Professor Suleiman. As we are near to conclusion of this enlightening one-day national level webinar on India's role in the new global order, I am honored to present my remarks. First, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our inaugurator, Professor Chandrakant Yatnur Sarji from Gulbarga University, Gulbarga. Your opening address set a perfect tone for today's discussion and provided valuable insights to the topic, sir.
Thank
And
you.
I also thank our today's chief guest and my guru, Professor Harish Ramaswamy, sir, Vice Chancellor, Raichur University, Raichur, for your thought-provoking speech. Your perspectives on India's strategic influence were both insightful and inspiring. Your words of wisdom enriched our webinar today, sir. And my sincere appreciation goes to our keynote speaker, Professor M.G. Vinod, sir, retired professor from Christ University, Bangalore. Your deep dive into India's role in the international relations has enriched our outstanding significantly, sir. I am equally grateful to our esteemed resource person, Professor B.V. Muralidhar, sir, Professor Surendra Kumar, sir, and
I think there is some technical.
Some technical.
Mm-hmm.
Suleiman.
Yeah, sir, I'm checking.
Dr. Suleiman, please attend to that.
Anyway, Harish sir, thanks for the good interaction and provoking. It was really
No,
correct.
my purpose is, utilize these things and then get back
yes,
and
yes.
start doing what we need to do.
So, yes, sorry, sir. Some technical issues and network issues, sir.
Yeah, that's why, India should not claim for leadership. Solve these things.
But Yatsu sir is
So,
very much concerned about the Security Council membership.
Yeah.
No,
sir,
not
I
only
am
that,
equally.
we are not in a, since 80s we are trying for this. Since 80s, it's almost 40 years we are trying, but still we are not in a position to get it. Why? This shows
That-
our stand or our position in international system.
Yes.
yes,
Sir, there are a
Tamanna.
lot of structural issues
Uh,
also. A lot of structural issues one has to keep in mind. In fact, even the UN Charter was amended only thrice, and all for flimsy reasons, just to increase the membership of the ECOSOC. No major structural change has been made because the
Structure
process
change.
is so difficult. So we'll have to do a lot of diplomatic.
True.
We need a lot of good diplomatic goodwill at the international level for it to happen. So I think we have to work towards it. It's not going. Nobody's going to give it to us in a silver platter, as you said.
Particularly Chinese.
Yeah.
From
Why
China.
would they bring India when they know there'll be a problem with India? That's why the coffee club is making hay when the sun is shining. The coffee club says you can have veto power without. You can be a permanent member of Security Council without veto power.
Without
without
it.
it.
India vetoes that argument.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
have
Tamanna,
permanent
please go ahead.
solution.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Sir, I won't take much of your time, sir, because due to time constraint, within few words, I conclude my presidential remarks. Today's webinar has provided us with a great comprehensive understanding of the evolving global order and the pivotal role India plays within it. The perspectives shared by our distinguished speakers and resource persons have highlighted the both challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for the nation. As we reflect on this occasion, it becomes evident that India's strategic positioning, diplomatic engagements, and economic powers are crucial in the shaping the future of a future global landscape. The ideas and insights shared today will undoubtedly serve as a foundation for further research and discussion in this field. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the organizing committee, faculty members, technical team, and students of the Department of Political Science who have worked tirelessly to ensure the success of this webinar. Your dedication and hard work are truly commendable. Finally, sir, I thank all the participants for your active engagement and for making this webinar a resounding success. With these very few words, I conclude my presidential remarks. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tamana. Professor
Also,
Vinod and all, it was a pleasure that you all came. And then I must thank each one of you for your wonderful presentation. I enjoyed really. I told
sir,
you
I
I'm very selfish, and then I
no,
really enjoyed listening to all of you after a long time.
Thank you very
Yes, no?
much.
personally, I also, sir, enjoyed with
Yeah.
your presentation. You are not
Thank you.
just a chief guest, but you are also equally expert in the field of international
Yes,
relations.
yes,
No,
sir.
no.
Sir, really, your
Thank you.
presence made us very, very happy, sir. Thank you once again. Thank
Thank
you,
you
sir.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks to
Muralidhar,
Tammanna and team.
Sir, seeing you after 15
it,
years, sir.
yes,
Seeing you after 15
15,
years, when we met in
15, yeah,
Mysore. This
correct.
KSET, sir.
Yes,
That's great.
yes. It
Thank
is
you
a
very much.
pleasure again.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank
Muralidhar.
you, one and all.
Yeah.
Now it is a formal our
Vote of
duty.
thanks.
No, it's okay. Tamana, forget about
Thank
it.
you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, sir. Bye.
Bye-bye,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you, one and all.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, man.
Sorry.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you.